For this list, we'll be looking at some of the most underappreciated games that deserve more recognition. Number 10. Enslaved: Odyssey to the West. Loosely based around the famed Chinese novel Journey to the West, Enslaved has you play as Monkey, a man bound to a woman determined to return to her village in a post-apocalyptic world. Number 9. Space Station Silicon Valley. Set aboard the titular space station, Silicon Valley has players control a microchip robot named Evo as you take control of the various mechanical animals aboard to solve puzzles and complete objectives. Number 8. PsyOps: The Mindgate Conspiracy. Psychic powers are a frequent staple of video games, but getting them just right can be difficult. Number 7. Mod Nation Racers. The kart racing genre has several big names that dominate attention, so it's no surprise that Mod Nation Racers went unnoticed. Even so, it's still a shame that more people don't know about it. Number 6. Skies of Arcadia. It's a game about sky pirates. How this didn't become a blockbuster franchise is truly baffling. Skies of Arcadia is a wonderfully inventive RPG with an exciting world of aerial lands to explore. Number 5. Power Stone. Dreamcast titles in general tend to be underrated, but Power Stone is arguably the game to get it the worst. Sure, it got a sequel, an anime, and has spawned some spiritual successors, but most people have never heard of it. Number 4. Mischief Makers. We have to shake our heads at anyone who didn't give Mischief Makers a chance when it was released. This 2.5D platformer follows Marina Lightyears, an android maid, as she explores planet Clancer in search of her creator. Number 3. Splosion Man. Despite featuring a protagonist that literally explodes, Splosion Man's impact on the games industry is really more of a fizzle. Number 2. Beyond Good and Evil. Although the game has a long-awaited prequel and even a movie in the works, Beyond Good and Evil was beyond a failure commercially when it was released, despite high praise from critics. Number 1. Jet Force Gemini. Space shooters were all the rage at the turn of the millennium, and now, so the fact that Jet Force Gemini didn't stand out as much as it should have is shocking. Made by the ever-reliable Rare for the Nintendo 64, Jet Force Gemini gives players control of a duo of space heroes and their dog as they take on an evil insectoid empire.
Greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 7th season of Timeless Gamer, where the games and gamers grow older while the gaming experiences will forever remain timeless. We are now live here in Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. And for our archive videos of our previous episodes, you can still check them out by going to the YouTube channel of Timeless Gamer, that is Timeless Gamer PRG, or just by going to the Facebook page of Pinoy Retro Gaming. Same as well with Twitch. And you can also listen to us by going to Audible, Amazon Music, Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Samsung Podcast, Podcast Index, Listen Notes, Pandora, TuneIn, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Deezer, just by searching Timeless Gamer. And joining us for tonight's episode, we got Sir Joel Banyaga Native from Jersey.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are. This is Joel Baklit of the Banyagi Native channel here on Kick and on Twitch, saying hi, good morning, and good evening to everybody. And we got a show for you, but we'll save that for the conversation ahead. We'll continue with Joel. Okay.
All right, thank you for that, Sir Joel. And of course, joining us all the way from the UK, we got Sir Viraj.
All right, guys. Looking forward to this episode. But yeah, welcome to the show. This should be an interesting one, guys.
Sir Viraj also representing the Sega Mega Masters on behalf of Sir Dan. So check that out by going to the YouTube channel, Sega Mega Masters. Everything all about the Sega Mega Master, the Sega Mega Drive, and the Master System.
Oh yeah, of course.
Previously on Timeless Gamer, what the hell did we talk about? I forgot. We talked about the PC games.
Yeah,
Of course.
mhm.
The PC games of the early 90s all the way to the year 2005. And there's a lot of variety that we mentioned on that particular episode. A variety of games. Games that that you wouldn't even thought that should be there, but for some reason they were there. So if you're curious on what those games were, guys, just check them out by going to the YouTube channel of Timeless Gamer or just going to the Facebook page of Pinoy Retro Gaming. And for this particular episode, guys, it's called the underestimated games,
Mhm.
not to be confused with underrated games. I'll look. So I might ask the panel here what are the difference. But for me, underrated games, saying something about underrated games, people played it, but they didn't praise it more. Underestimated games, it's more of a personal matter. Like if uh if you think just by looking at the cover of a game, you check the gameplay and you think, it's not for me. That's underestimating it.
Mhm.
But when you played it, oh, okay, it might turn your head around.
Mhm.
So, Joe, what do you think is the difference between the underrated and underestimated?
That's actually a very good estimation of it, John. My personal take on it is underrated is something that the general public or the critics have said, this isn't all that, and eventually did turn out to be a very well crafted experience for a lot of people. Underestimated games is that one where you personally have had experience with, in the sense that you've had a little bit of something, a little bit of thinking in the old days, and then when you got to try the game actually in itself, when you get your hands on it, you find out, hey, this game is actually a lot of fun. I'm going to make it one of my main genres now. That's a
So,
very good
personal
definition.
bias gets in the way.
Yes, personal bias gets in the way. Correct.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you for that, Sir Joe. How about Sir Viraj? Difference between underrated and underestimated.
Well, it's exactly what Sir Joel said. I mean, it's not much of a no-brainer there, isn't there? I mean,
Mhm.
yeah. So if you go out there and there's lots of games out there that you think, oh, well, okay, this game's really good. And there's games that I've played in the past, and unsung heroes, for example, that doesn't get really sung greatly about. Obviously, everyone remembers the big franchise names like, say, Zelda or Mario or Sonic or whatever. They're staples to whatever platform they're on, but nobody wants to talk about Rocket Knight Adventures on the Sega Mega Drive anymore. That's a
Mhm.
huge game for the system. A travesty it was not loaded on any of the minis, but I digress. That's an example. If we're talking about what we're talking about today, it's games that you didn't think were good when you bought it. You looked at the cover and you think, oh, really? Is this something that I want to play? All these other people are saying it's okay, it's good. Is this something that I want to play in particular? I mean, with me, I'm a bit of a living contradiction because the games I've chosen are actually really big games. But for me, I didn't think much of them because I thought I'm in my comfort zone. These aren't the games that I want to play, but people have told me they're good. So that's the context that I'm going to give, because you're going to think, really, Viraj? But this is what my thoughts, what I thought about these games at the time. So there you go.
Very
All
cool.
right. Thank you for that, Sir Viraj. Now, for this particular episode, guys, so it's only us three for now. We are expecting one more panel to join us. Surprise, surprise na lang. And Sir Viraj will be taking over for this particular episode.
Mhm.
We will just going to do a round robin of sorts.
Mhm.
Each of us will say one particular game, and then once everybody has a turn, then we'll revert back for a second
Mhm.
round. And so Sir Viraj, take it away.
All
Yeah.
right, so my first game, I'm going to cover the handhelds because these guys are going to do the PC and console side of things. I'm going to pick on handhelds because nobody talks about handhelds. Okay, so the first game, and you're going to think, what really? This is something that you didn't think, right, Viraj? You didn't think seriously. So the game I'm talking about is Metroid Fusion, the Game Boy Advance. Come on, Metroid is a prolific franchise. It existed even before Metroid Fusion was released. What's wrong with you? Well, what's wrong with me is I never played the original Metroid, never played the Game Boy Metroid, never played the third in the series on the Super Nintendo. I was kind of aware of it, but even back in those days, I thought, okay, fine. Now, I just got on a Game Boy Advance SP. I had a couple of games on it, Zelda Link to the Past, Four Swords Adventures, and Sonic Advance 2. But then, I thought I need to get some more games in my library. And there were a number of games I bought, but this was one of those games that I saw in the pre-owned section of the game shop. And I remember there was a colleague of mine in my class talking to me. Sorry, I say colleague. I mean, a student that I used to study with was in college then. He goes, Metroid Fusion is a good game. I love that game. And he kept going on about it. I thought, let's give this a go, you know? And obviously Metroid Prime was being released and everyone was getting excited over that on the Cube. And I'm like, that graphics or that looked amazing back then. They still hold up, even though they've done a remaster. But anyway, back to Metroid Fusion, which is the fourth in the franchise. It says Metroid 4 in the credits when you load up. Now, this game I played and I got into it. And, you know, you play as the titular character, Samus Aran. And the story is she's gone to this base somewhere and there's a distress call that she was answering. And the base is overrun by this virus called the SR388 virus, or whatever it's called. I forget the name of the virus, but it's the X parasite. Let's call it that way. Not SR, sorry, SR388 is the planet. The virus is the X parasite. That's what it was. Sorry, got those two people up so long ago. It's a 20-year-old game. Anyway, so she goes to this base, and this virus has escaped, and everybody's got this this virus or whatever. And the virus has infected all the the monsters and the inhabitants in this planet, also on this station. And it's your job to sort of work out as Samus what's gone on. Okay, now, you know, again, you got this fusion suit, which is like a Metroid suit you have, which you've sort of been given from the outset because that's what it was. It fused to you, whatever, to begin with, and that can actually absorb because the Metroids were originally the predators to the X parasites. So as you can see in the gameplay, she's absorbing the X parasite and it's replenishing her health. So it's very different to the way Metroid games are because once you take out a bad guy, you get the X parasite, you absorb it, and you get their strengths or whatever. And you can also replenish your weapons with the X parasites. That's really, really interesting. What I really liked about this game and being introduced to the Metroid franchise and to all new people that who've never played Metroid before. Okay, and this is one for those of you watching thinking who are aware of Metroid but haven't even dipped their toe in that pond. This is the game you should play first out of all the Metroid games because it is the most straightforward game. As you can see here, there's a little bit of text here, and that's her computer, Adam Malkovich, who was basically named a computer after an ex-CEO, who tells her what to do and where to go. So this game pretty much directs you and guides you. In fact, it could be argued it's probably the easiest Metroid game in terms of, like, you won't get lost. You will not get lost because you have an idea of where to go, even though you have this lovely maze-type map. And I really love this game because it really does make you want to explore, and that's the whole key theme in the Metroid games of exploration. What's going to happen next? As you can see here, there's a little bit of cinematics here. So you can see the X-Parasite has possessed a clone of Samus here. And that's the main protagonist, so antagonist in this particular game. And it has an atmosphere to it, this game. And it gave me a real sense of fear. The music in this game, the tension. When Samus is moving around, you're thinking, okay, goodness, what's going on? And I'm not saying that there's any jump scares in it, but there are some bits that are like, oh my God, what's that? Oh my God, look at this monster. And look at the art design. Look at the level of detail on it. And I was actually quite amazed. This is a 2002 game, and they put so much work into this. And, it deserves the respect that it gets, and it deserved my respect. And it got me into not just Metroid, but the Metroidvania style of games. This is my first ever entry into a Metroidvania style game where you go into a map room, you collect items, you upgrade your suit, you get stronger, you have really, really fun, confined, yet fun boss battles. You follow a story that really makes you feel engrossed and invested in the storyline. You know, it's a storyline that makes you want to feel like you're playing the story. And because you have that immersiveness in the game that you're in, you have a real escape. You know, not to mention this game had an awesome stereo soundtrack. You know, it has an option of playing mono and stereo sound when you go into the settings, and that's what they were doing with the Game Boy Advance here. So I was absolutely blown away by this game because I didn't think much of Metroid before this. I thought, come on, it can't be that good. I had tried playing Super Metroid on this via the SNES emulator, but obviously I didn't have a gamepad for my PC. I had a keyboard, and that just has too many buttons. You can't play it on a keyboard. So I thought I'll play it another time. And eventually I revisited it and purchased it legitimately on the Wii U eShop. So this game made me want to play all the other 2D Metroid games. Zero Mission, which came off this, which is a perfect remake of the original Metroid, which is a much more challenging game than this. Okay. Then eventually Super Metroid, which can be argued as the best 2D Metroid game, which people always say. And obviously there was Return of Samus or Samus Returns on the 3DS as a remake of the Game Boy game, which deserved to be remade. The first two Metroid games, if you're ever going to play them, I'd recommend playing the remakes, which is Zero Mission and Samus Returns. And obviously we had the fantastic Metroid Dread, which came out just the other year. An amazing game. So that's just the 2D Metroid games. Also, you've got the Prime games, which are a different kettle of fish altogether. And because I love Metroid so much, I thought, let's give the Prime games a go. And I played them on the Wii via the eShop as part of the Prime trilogy. And I fell in love with the Metroid games. In fact, in my opinion, there's not one bad Metroid game. I know people give Other M a bad shout. It's an abomination with these anime storylines. You know, it doesn't work. I don't like the story. I don't like the dialogue. But as a game, it was a good game. Maybe it wasn't the best Metroid game, but it was a good game for what it is, in my opinion. But going back to the subject at hand, Metroid Fusion, Metroid 4, it's a great game. And it blows me away at just how great they engineered this game. And it really does hold up to the test of time. How do you play this game? Well, you got Switch Online now, which is probably a very cost-effective way of playing it. And I'm sure, even though getting this boxed and complete is expensive, it's about £100 if you're talking UK money. You can get cart only, like for an affordable price, is cart only. And of course, there's other ways of playing these games, which I'm not even going to mention. But anyway, that's my thoughts on Metroid Fusion. What do you think, guys?
Well, it looks certainly does look like well, not a takeoff. It is the Metroid experience. I've played a little bit of Metroid from the original NES Famicom days, and I did want to try this one. The thing that really caught my attention was the blue highlights in her suit. That's the virus, correct?
No,
That's the virus.
No. So what let me explain. So at the start, I believe the story was at the start of this, there was something happened with Samus and a Metroid, and so Metroid had fused with a suit or something. So that's actually a Metroid suit she's wearing.
Oh, okay.
So that's what she's wearing. It's a fusion suit. That's what it is. And what it does is because back on the planet where the Metroids used to roam, there was something called an X parasite, an X virus, and their natural predator was the Metroids. But when you've hunted the Metroids to extinction, the X parasite became the dominant life form, and that was even just as dangerous because what it would do is it would infect the host and it would possess them. So it would turn humans into zombies, in other words. And it would also make whatever animals or whatever it possessed to be much more dangerous. So there are obviously different variants of the X virus, X parasite, and the idea is because it's infected this entire base, you're meant to eradicate the X parasite, and that fusion suit that you have makes you strong because it allows you to because the Metroid's a natural predator. Obviously, that fusion suit will allow you to absorb the X parasite and use it as nutrients as she's doing. So see that little little yellow thing that came out of the enemy, or that little green thing? That's the X parasite, and she's absorbing that, and as you see, her energy goes up and her weapon goes up. Obviously, that's basically the gist of the game that I can remember. Obviously, there's secret passages. other enemies, etc. But
Mm.
that's the game.
Well, it certainly does seem like a very involved game, if you ask me. And there's lots of mechanics going on all at the same time on real time. You're
Mm.
balancing the powers that you acquire with the resources that you have. Yeah, like I mentioned, the missiles, you kind of have to look for upgrades and
Mm.
everything. And the storyline is certainly very interesting. It's a combination of, shall we say, aliens from the 80s and shall we say, Ghostbusters, maybe. Because you're going.
It was no secret that actually Metroid was inspired heavily from Aliens. In fact,
Mm,
Ridley, who's one of the characters, was named after the director of Aliens, Ridley Scott. So
oh.
that's in homage to it, out of
Mhm,
respect, because it's definitely an Aliens
mhm.
inspired story.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, this particular game is probably the most unique out of all the Metroid games in how it's different, since that you absorb the parasite. It plays quite differently, and that's what I think is definitely worth playing. It might be, like I say, because you're absorbing the parasite and you're picking up energy quite readily. This
Mhm,
actually makes it a much more playable and easier game for a newcomer for Metroid. That's why I say it's the first Metroid game you should really play.
mhm.
If we're looking at the Metroid story chronology wise, in
Yes.
terms of the storyline, this is probably the most recent, because Metroid Prime, the events of that happened before Metroid Fusion.
Mhm,
Super Metroid happened before this. All these stories are, there's a chronology to it. Metroid Fusion
yeah.
is the most recent, up to date one, and then there's Metroid Dread, which is actually a newer story, canon wise. So this is
Mhm,
actually the second to last up to date story, because years into the future after the whole adventure she had in Prime. So it does have a story. There is a narrative in there, but really, you play the Metroid games at this stage for the gameplay. And the story's there, but it's a wonderful,
mhm. Well,
really.
that's actually something that matters to somebody like me. I love lore. I love how things get interconnected in storylines and everything. One thing that really matters to me is whether or not I'm jumping into a storyline, and would I be lost with the basic plot of the game, because I have to have familiarity with the ones that came before. Would
No,
this be the case with this one?
no. The whole Adam Malkovich thing, a computer, so Metroid Other M came after this.
Hmm.
But it's explained who Adam Malkovich was in this, and
Hmm.
then they built upon that character in Other M, and that came out like nearly 10 years after this.
Hmm.
So there's that aspect. I think you can go in with playing this game not being familiar with anything in terms of the history and lore
Hmm.
of any of the Metroid games, and I think to really, and I always remember director James Cameron saying this about
Hmm.
Terminator 2, which is, he said, to have a sequel, it has to stand on its own, but also carry the original as well. And
Yes.
you can actually like, it's like you can watch Terminator 2 without watching Terminator.
Hmm.
And this, you can play Metroid Fusion without playing any of them other Metroid games and having any knowledge to it.
Okay.
So that's why this game holds up. You don't have to actually play them canonically. Like, you don't have to play episode 1, 2, 3 to understand the story. You understand, okay, it goes into a backstory anyway, giving context as to what Metroids are and what she did. And you've got these little, I wouldn't say animated, like, you've got still cutscenes as to what it is, and they're actually very well drawn as to what
Hmm.
it is. And it's really good story, I would say.
Well, for those of you in the audio podcast, we are showing footage right now of Metroid. What's the title of this one? Metroid Fusion,
Metroid,
and it
Metroid 4,
is.
yeah.
It doesn't seem the visuals are very colorful compared to the for the NES Famicom version that I originally played.
Mm.
It's not as, what's the right color palette that I remember from them. It was all blacks,
It's a very
whites,
dark game.
yellows. Yes, it was very stark and dark game. The original one. It was blacks, whites, yellow. Sorry, blacks, yellows, and lots of browns, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
This
Yeah.
one, the visuals are very alien planet organic type, if you
Mm.
ask me. It does look like the planet has been lived in, but at the same time colonized also. There are sections that are heavily mechanical, but there are
Yeah.
also sections that are
Well,
very natural as well.
yeah, so it's on a space station, but there's environmental zones, and what they've done is they've got animals that they're experimenting on, but they have habitats for those elements. So you got like a fiery room, like a really heated room.
Hmm.
Then you also have like a forest room, which you saw, and you got like a watery room, shall we say? So you got different alien animals, and they've obviously created habitable environments based on the environment of their planet. And it's a science laboratory, science station, but all these areas have been infected by the X parasite. So as you go through each section, and then you head back to the main bit, and then you go to another section. So it's linear in that regard. A lot of people like the open world aspect of it. Yes, okay, you can argue that Metroid Fusion is probably a bit more contrived than other Metroid games when it comes to the exploratory aspect of it. However, that's why I think it's a good game for newcomers, because you still have that exploratory aspect of it, but you understand the rules of where you need to go. There are some curveballs that are thrown at you because it's not predictable in regards to the way events will transpire in this game. But that being said, it still offers what I call a good challenge. And it's a good fun. Again, it's not an unforgiving game, but because you do have save rooms in there, we can save and continue, and recharge rooms to sort of recharge your missiles is the save room, etc. You see it in the video here. Navigation, you got a map there, etc. So you're not going to ever be completely lost. So there's many things that I haven't even spoken about in this game, and they're just up to you if you want to discover those things, because I don't want to spoil everything. But it's a very, very good story. Very good.
As in most Metroidvania games, a lot of the joy of gameplay is exploring, finding out more and more about the area that you're fighting through, and realizing that there's more to things that are happening all around you than you first realize. It looks like something that will spark a good sense of discovery for whoever might be interested in playing the game Metroid, and it might actually even begin an interest in the rest of the series from the look of it.
Anyone in the comment section got anything to say of that? Because I haven't got it up here yet.
Oh yeah, that's true. Let's have that's a very good point. Let's have a very quick look at the comment section right now, because as always, we here in Timeless Gamer aren't just talking among ourselves. We also appreciate the people who pass by and give their opinions as well. If you guys want, please put in your opinions in the chats, and we will make sure to either read them out or react to them. So first things first, Ranji Patag, my godson in Pinoy Retro Gaming, says hello everyone. And there's Kim Ivan Juarez Villarreal, who says good evening. Very good. And Miss Charlene Alista San Agustin, who sadly could not be with us right now, says good evening as well. And Matt Bustle of Bustle Plays Games, the guy who specializes in horror games and dungeon crawling role playing games, which sometimes double as horror games as well. Matt Bustle says Rocket Knight Adventures. That's a very good call out, Viraj. He appreciates Rocket Knight Adventures, and of course there's. Yeah, of course, yes. And of course, Arch Neil Philip Ocampo says, happy streaming from Arch Neil Gaming. Very cool. Thanks very much, Arch Neil Philip Ocampo. Let's not forget Angel Santos of Tito Jano Gaming, and Miss Eileen Tadeo, who, if we can't show her video right now or in this episode, we will make sure to have her video available on the Pinoy Retro Gaming page for public consumption, because I am absolutely sure she is going to have an amazing bit of input for our topic for today. All right, back to you, Viraj.
Right, I'm pretty much done talking about this game. We move on to the next one. Unless you guys have any other questions in regards to the game, or anyone in the comment section has got any questions in regards to Metroid Fusion or Metroid in general.
Well, let me see. Me personally, my question regarding Metroid Fusion is this something that if you began, would it be something that you would well, you did say that it is a good intro game. Level of Let me ask you, level of frustration, because there's a difference between difficulty and level of frustration. How would you rate this in terms of frustration?
Very low. I mean, there are bits on certain boss battles and things like that. You mean like, oh, why did I do this? And you learn very quickly as the patterns of the way the boss moves, vulnerability points. Okay, I should have used missiles when he opened his eyes, things like that. So this is the vulnerable part. I should aim it. So it's quite straightforward, to be honest.
Very good, very good.
And you work out, okay, where's the weak point? Where's the point you got to attack it from? What weapons do you use? Charge beam, or do I use the missile, etc.? You work it out very quickly. You have to be, someone. There was actually a specific YouTuber who kicked me from his channel because I said this is painful because I saw him play this live. I got really upset. When you use the missiles, it's common sense. So I suppose maybe he didn't have common sense. I won't mention his name, but it's one of those things where it is a problem-solving aspect. There are bits where, like, say, if you can even die just walking around. There's hazards or whatever. You're thinking, Why not just replenish your energy tanks? You learn very quickly. I need to replenish my energy tanks. Why am I? Why?
Mm.
What you plan things. You go back and you replenish it by attacking energy enemies that respawn, etc., or going to a charge room, etc. So I wouldn't say it's a frustrating game. I would
Mm-hmm.
say, yes, it does have a difficulty curve that goes up, and it does spike towards the end.
Mm.
And you have to obviously as the enemies get tougher and tougher, they take a lot more hits to kill, and they have a lot more varied attacks. So you really do have to keep moving, And
Mm.
I don't want to sort of spoil anything in regards to it.
Oh.
There are some very interesting things that play back to the original Metroid game. Some interesting enemies.
Mm.
And when I look back at this game, I think, oh, I know what that was, because obviously you play other
Mm.
games now. I think, oh, that was that creature, and that was it. And you understand that if you played Metroid games before, but it's not
Mm.
like you lose anything. Like the gameplay itself. To answer your question, it's not a frustrating game. It
Oh,
won't put you.
good.
Um,
Mm.
yeah, I wouldn't say it's. I'd say it's actually a very very good game. It's just a very well engineered game. A bit too easy for our Sega man sedan. He'd be
Mm.
like, game for children,
Mm.
I think it's just a very well engineered game for what it is. So,
Very good. First things first, let me just acknowledge. Dave Scott says hashtag RGT raid. Retro Gaming Times has rated our channel and our stream, our podcast. Thanks very much, Dave
ah,
Scott, and thank you very much, Derek Ponay of Retro Gaming Times for the raid. Much appreciated. For those of you who are just coming in right now, we are doing our podcast, the Timeless Gamer podcast, and our topic is underappreciated games, the games
mm,
that might have flown under your radar in the old days, but when
yeah,
you got to play, you say, "This is so much fun." So that is our topic for today.
well, yeah,
I forgot to make a comment about that, Viraj. The fact that you mentioned that it's important for a sequel to stand on its own, but still honor the source material, still honor the
mm,
one that came before it. It's a very
yeah,
important thing, especially in times like this where multiverses and multi-sequel franchises happen. It's very important where standalone game can be played by itself and be enjoyed on its own, but still when people stretch their muscles and look for it, they will find references to the original game. This seems to be one of those times where you don't need to have had played or total familiarity have total familiarity with the original games for you to be able to enjoy it, but still, if you do have familiarity with the original games, you'll be taking away more from this game than you would
I think the
from.
reason it was also sorry to cut you off
Go ahead.
there.
Mhm.
I think the reason, okay, yeah, it has all that in terms of it played homage to Super Metroid, which is the Super Nintendo, and this is actually the direct sequel. If you look at it from a video game point of view, this is the next one that came out. This is the fourth one.
Mm.
People were hungry for this game because it
Ah.
had been over 7, 8 years since the Super Metroid came out, and
Mm.
Nintendo were looking to make a Metroid game for Nintendo 64. But the story is, they just didn't know how to make a Metroid game around that controller. That's the truth.
Ah.
They just couldn't get around the controller because I read about it. And
Mhm.
this one and this one actually has connectivity with Metroid Prime via the GameCube Link controller. So
Oh.
you can actually wear. I think I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, in the comment section. But
Mhm.
you can, you can wear her, like you can have a suit. You can basically, it's a little thing where if you
Mhm.
had connected to the Prime Metroid Prime, you'd actually be able to wear her various suit in this game. It's
Mhm.
just an aesthetic thing, and vice versa. And if you locked it, you'd also unlock the original Metroid game in the cartridge. It's actually in the cartridge
Oh, very cool. Really?
fusion, and you can
Mm.
unlock it when you link it up the Prime. Obviously, I never had that facility, and you can actually
Mm.
buy the original Metroid on the NES Classics if you really cared about it. But you have two games in one in the original cart, so I just wanted to put it there. You put the original Metroid in there.
Well, I mean, it's not hard to do, especially considering how tiny the games from the original consoles were. Some would say just 256K. It
Yeah.
would easily fit in one of the modern cartridges. But first things first, let's just say hi to Zelsin Alejandro Manzano in the chats as well, who says good evening, and
Yeah.
John Philip Divina Gracia, who says no Smash Bros. Well, it can be Smash Bros can be underappreciated, especially in terms of the fact that I'm not my reflexes are crap. I'm not very good at fighting games or brawl type games, so I might not appreciate a game like Smash Bros initially. But maybe if I get the chance to play it or play it in a party with friends, I might enjoy it. I might appreciate it more. It's
The
like I said, it's a personal matter. Yes, Viraj, you were about to say.
I think the N64 Smash Bros was certainly underappreciated because it's the
Mm.
first of its kind, and people it came out quite late, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong for the N64.
Okay.
And then eventually Melee came out on the Cube, and that really killed it. That was the flagship for Smash Brothers. And then ever since that game came out on all the other Nintendo platforms, Smash Brothers has been the president of like one of the top Nintendo franchises for every platform, and it sells in millions. It sells millions. So I wouldn't say now it's under, but the first N64 one, yes. But after that, I think again, Smash is a huge hit for anyone, and I would be hard pressed to say that's underappreciated by anyone now because everyone knows about it. I think when at the time here, like I said, the Metroid game was still under the radar for many people. People who didn't really think about it on Super Nintendo because Super Nintendo was the main one. Obviously, the NES one was there, and you got the Game Boy one. But as a franchise, I think it only really exploded with the Metroid Prime and Fusion era, and this is basically it. And this is why I didn't really think much of it. I thought, what is this Metroid nonsense that this guy's going on about? And if I forget the guy's name, I only with him for a short time. If he's out there, I wish he was the best because he referred me to a game series which I loved. I love this my favorite Nintendo IP now.
Okay. Well, there you go. Kurt Labrada in the chat says Terraria was a game I never heard of, but gave it a chance and ended playing it for hundreds of hours. Yes, that's exactly the kind of thing that we're talking about in this episode of the podcast, Kurt Labrado. The fact that a game might be flying under your radar because of personal biases, personal experiences, personal traumas, shall we say? But you give it a chance later on, and you find yourself completely hooked. That is the theme of today's podcast episode. Excellent, excellent. All right, so
I think we're ready to move on to your choice.
I think
we're
my
ready to-
choice. Okay. Unless Joe wants to chime in regarding Metroid Fusion.
Yeah, that's to say.
Okay. Let's get the pervy stuff out of
Oh
the
my
way
God.
first.
Okay. I knew this was coming. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Okay.
So, no, I mean, I got a big screen TV right here on my side. I'm just watching it. Okay, and it's so nice looking at Samus Aran on a big screen TV. I can practically see her ass crack through that suit,
Yeah.
which is good. Okay. Now, in regarding with this game, okay, out of the way. All right. Out of all, so there are a lot of Nintendo has a lot of first party video games, right? You got your Mario, you got your Zelda, you got your Pokemon, you got your Metroid, and like out of all of their first party games, I still haven't really found that one game that I like. I mean, I'm familiar with all of them, but never have I ever like really played like a single one franchise of theirs that I really wanted. And like I'm familiar, but for some reason I just don't want to get into it. But I like Contra, I like Mega Man, and I'm like Metroid is basically Contra and Mega Man put together.
No, it's not.
Kind of.
In the way
Kind
it
of.
plays, yes, but it's more adventure exploratory. It's a slower paced game than Contra, definitely.
Oh yeah.
And Mega Man, it's a slower paced game, but it's got a much more deeper adventure aspect to it. Trust me. There's a lot more exploratory. It's an exploratory and adventure game. It's very cool. It does look Contra-esque and Mega Man-esque.
No, that's the thing.
Things like there are upgrades for a suit and all that. And with Contra, you have different weapons and all that. But they're fast-paced, side-scrolling action platforms-esque games. Whereas this one, yes, there's platforming elements and all that, but it is predominantly an exploration game.
See, so that's where the personal bias is coming from, because that's what I'm always thinking, looking at Metroid, even with the first Metroid on the NES. I always thought that this is just basically Contra and Mega Man mashed together.
It's not a run and gun. It's an adventure. I know it's got run and gun elements to it, but it's predominantly an adventure game. Yeah, it's more akin to Zelda than it is those two franchises.
Okay.
And I'm like, so what would it take for Metroid uh, for me to play this game.
Mm.
Granted, I already know who's inside that suit,
Hmm.
and I'm like, what would it take? Is there any particular Metro game that you can play Samus without the suit, or the
Uh,
suit is very imperative?
well, well, the closest you'll get is the sequel, which is Zero Mission. Like, there's this little bit. Spoiler alert, people. So those of you who haven't played Zero Mission, want to play it, don't listen to this. You want to block this bit out. I'll say it very quickly. Towards the end of Zero Mission, she's stripped of her Various suit and she's in a Zero suit, and that's as close as you're going to get, my friend.
Hmm.
Unless of course you play, unless of course you play Smash,
Well, yeah, he's in that Zero suit, I
right?
guess. But look, you don't play this game because you play it because you want to have the fun. You don't want to play unless someone does like a special ROM hack where they have her in her underwear or something.
Right.
But I don't know if that exists yet. Maybe you'll have to look out for it. But anyway,
Now I'm just curious about the jiggle physics, just in case.
the
Oh
big-
my gosh.
Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
This is a Nintendo game. It's a family-friendly game. All right, everyone talk about
it is still a Nintendo game. They will not go there. But come on, what
I've
would
seen
it take,
the ones for
Nintendo?
Street
What
Fighter
would
6.
it take
I've seen the Jiggle ones. I've seen
if
the
you
Street
want
Fighter
them sales numbers? Okay, if you want the sales numbers to go up, just do the fan service. Okay. All right.
Nintendo will do very well on their own without that. They don't need to have. I know you want to see the cake out. I know you want to see some cake. All right. There's loads of other cake you can watch. I mean, like I said, Street Fighter 6 has some mods where you see Cammy's cakes and all that. You want to see that some cake. All right. Come on.
Sir Dan knows what I'm talking about.
All right, Dan Faulkner, one of our co-panelists here, who sadly could not join us, says you haven't found that one game which you like from Nintendo Sergio, because they are generally crap. Metroid
Well,
is definitely one of their best.
One of their best crap.
Strong words from one of the Sega Mega Masters.
well,
Right.
you all know that voice.
Mhm.
It's definitely one to go for.
And John Philip de Vinagracia says, debate, not a fighting game, FGC says. Okay. Well, that's certainly something.
Oh, you mean Smash? It's not a
Smash,
fighting game.
yes.
It is a fighting game. What is he on? Huh? What's been smoking?
It's-
You're beating each other up. What else is it?
Yeah, I guess John Philip de Vinagracia is saying it's a brawl. It's not so much a
So
fighting game
unless
to
you're
me.
killing each other, it's not a fighting game.
Yes, in his in
No,
the
it's a fighting game.
FGC's fighting game community's opinion, it's not a fighting game unless it's one on one or 3-on-3. It's more a case,
So
or
if you
face to
cannot kill the
face.
if you cannot kill the other player, if you cannot knock out the other player, then it's
It's
technically
more a
not
case of, because
not a fighting game.
there's plenty of platforms that you can jump over to and
Really?
change the tactics. The tactics are not purely like you have to consider where the guy is coming from on a flat plane.
Oh.
It's the fact that on a brawl platform, there's multiple platforms that you have to consider where you're coming from, knockout style and everything. I mean, there's an argument to be made.
There is
But-
a huge argument here because you could actually have a stage which is just one platform, and they do it in Smash Brothers.
Oh,
and the
okay.
idea is to attack the other person. So
Mhm.
you whack them, and if they get over 100%, or like you get 100% on them, they
Mm.
become lighter and lighter. And the idea is to smash them out of the arena. That's how
Oh,
it works. And
okay.
there's three types of ways you can fight someone. There's three types of brawlers. Obviously, now we're at the stage where you get ones which actually use weapons. You get proper brawlers with their fists. You get some with special effects and all this sort of stuff. So there's actually a lot. The roster for Smash Bros is outrageously big now. It's huge. And there is that aspect. Yes, it's not your traditional versus fighter like Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat,
Mhm.
okay, where you KO the person, but
Yeah.
you're actually KOing them in terms of knocking them out of the arena. It's just a different dynamic. So actually, it is a versus fighting game with respect, but you are actually playing it. It's obviously got a different mechanic to it. It still comes part of that genre. It says it on the back of the box. It says fighting. All right, I'll show it to you. The Nintendo have said it. It is, and in any magazine they'll say it's fighting on the genre when they're reviewing it. So that's what
Yeah.
it is. Facts.
Maybe it's like maybe it's a different division of fighting game, shall we say? Maybe it's just like there's a certain delineation as to certain kinds of fighting games, I guess. The same way that Street Fighter isn't the same type as Battle Arena Toshinden or something like that. There you go. All right, very cool. So I guess that's Virage's first game, and let's rotate over to me, I guess. My first game of the underappreciated game genre, people who have been watching my streams will not be surprised that I am presenting this as the unappreciated game genre that I am going to be forwarding for this episode. For those of you who are not familiar, I have been playing a lot of fishing games on my streams lately. Fishing games, you'd say, why are you presenting that? Isn't that the most boring kind of game available right now? Aside from pushing boxes simulator, shall we say? Because there's an old game where warehouse boxes, you push warehouse boxes. But I digress. Fishing games, I started off on it, personally speaking, when I started playing an old game called Legend of the River King on the Game Boy Color, if I remember correctly. And it was very rudimentary, very basic, because I was playing Harvest Moon before, and I heard about this other game by Natsume called Legends of the River King, and I got to try it, and it was very simple, and it didn't really appeal to me. I finished it, but it wasn't really anything that caught my fancy. Later on, I started delving into other games that had fishing mechanics in them. Of course, Harvest Moon being one of them. Another game is Breath of Fire, the Breath of Fire series. Breath of Fire 3 had a fishing sub game to it. Breath of Fire 4 had a fishing sub game to it. And one of the bigger games most recently that had a fishing sub game to it was the Yakuza series, particularly Yakuza Kiwami, where you put Kazuma Kiryu or some of the other characters and went to some place like a river stream or out to the ocean where he could go and fish. And it's basic but fun. If when
Sonic
I
Frontiers. Sorry to cut you off there. Sonic Frontiers has a fishing segment. I just want to throw that in there.
I didn't even know that Sonic Frontiers. I'll have to check that out. But I mean, now that I'm into this whole genre, I've started delving into fishing games like
Sonic
crazy. Like
Frontiers has a fishing game. Sonic
I
Who
didn't
Can't
even know
Swim.
that. That's true. That's very true.
Who's fishing there?
Well, that we'll have to check that out. But me
Yeah, well,
personally,
we'll ask Miss Charlene about that.
yes, we'll ask
She
Miss Charlene because
she
she
might
is
I've
know
our
it.
our resident Sonic expert.
beaten the
She
game. You
might
can ask
know
me
it.
about it. I've told you, there's a fishing game in there. It's fun. Go on.
But yeah, this game, I'm going to present this underappreciated game. It's called Bassmaster Fishing 2022. Now, I'll have to say, my background with fishing games was very spotty at best. But when this game got offered in Microsoft Game Pass, I said, "Oh my gosh, this looks as boring as ASF, boring ASF," and I decided on a lark to give it a try. I decided to load it up. Decided to do casting, see what the mechanics of the game are. I had no idea about the terminologies: bait, tackle, rods, reels, lures, stuff like that. This game taught me everything from the beginning to all the way to the fine to striking a fish and then reeling it in and qualifying for poundage. Now, Bassmaster Fishing 2022 is a hardcore fishing simulator. We're talking it's not arcadey like some games, like some fishing games are, where you if you've played a game if you've played Animal Crossing, there is a fishing game to that as well. You wait for a circle to go in, and once the circle goes into towards your rod, you press the X button and it strikes, and you start railing it in, just pressing X over and over again. This is not that game. This is a hardcore fishing type game where you almost feel like you're there battling fish out on the water. For those of you in the audio portion, we are showing footage of a fishing of Bassmaster Fishing 2022 right now, where you have to consider all the aspects of fishing. You have to consider the temperature of the water. You have to consider the type of fish that you're looking for. You have to consider the areas where you're casting your rod and lure and trying to catch that perfect strike where you are looking for a particular fish. Some tournaments are only counting certain fish like largemouth bass, smallmouth bass, things like that. And if you catch a one of the fish that is not considered qualified, like a long nosed gar or a bluegill, it doesn't count towards your points at the end of the round, and you'd have wasted your time trying to lure that thing in. Now, it's not it might not be as fun for for a lot of people when you look at it. And honestly, when I started off on it, I was completely confused. I was completely baffled. How the heck do you do this? What do you do? And it took a fair amount of time for me to just try to start feeling the game, because the tutorial is there. It starts it off with a basic tutorial, and you get it teaches you. You go out into the water, you throw out your line, you feel the fish bite, and you pull on it, and you have to get a feel of whether the line is getting tense. There's a tension to the line, and it might break. The line can break, and you might lose your lure. Now, all of this is very alien to a lot of us here in the Philippines, and maybe a lot of other people all over the world too. But honestly, once you get into it, this kind of game is nail-bitingly tense. There's a lot of times where you are waiting for that particularly good strike or perfect strike from a particularly good fish. Some of the fish here are even legendary. I once caught a 40-pound fish, and Joe on my stream actually said there is no way that your avatar is carrying a 40-pound fish with just your two hands in your boat too, in your tiny little boat too. And I agreed with him because of the fact that a 40-pound fish normally would take two people to haul in. And Lord knows that's going to be hard. But the fact is, this hardcore fishing simulator will scratch that itch if you're looking for something that is further than your most rudimentary type of fishing game. Because if you've started off with Legend of the River King, and you came all away from it with a bad taste in your mouth, saying that's all there is to fishing, this game will set you straight. Bassmaster Fishing will show you that everything that you throw in there, everything that you bring into the game will matter. The length of your rod, the how heavy your line is, the temperature of the water is, what section of the river you're going to be going to, if you're going to be going to the reeds or lily pads or out into the deep, they all matter. And it clicks inside of your head where you kind of say, "Hey, that is the fish that I'm looking for. I need to get that." And it becomes addicting to a certain point, because I was unappreciative of the game in the beginning. It was very boring on concept, but when you get into it, when the fish bites into your hook, and you start reeling it in, and you're fighting it because there is a tension meter. If you there's a certain moment there where you know that you're about to break the line, but you still reel it in anyway, and you successfully land the fish. It's a feeling of accomplishment like no other. Honestly, it's hard to explain, and for the people who are watching the episode, it's really not something that you might experience firsthand, because you might be put off by the very idea of fishing. But trust me, if you get to try it, you will enjoy it. All right. So, Kurt Labrado in the chat says, in real life, I got more fish caught than my uncle, who is a fisherman, and my father, who lived by the beach or sea. All my experience was just from the PS1 game Bass Landing. Bass Landing is a great game, Kurt. That's a really good fishing game as well. I mean, if you guys are interested, I might do a video series on the Pinoy Retro Gaming page detailing which fishing games will be interesting, which games might that people might want to get into. And if you guys want, we'll start off that series sometime very soon. Dan Faulkner says, Sir Joel is selling me on these fishing games. Thank you very much for the compliment, Dad, because of the fact that uh, it's the concept itself is it will bore you to tears. But when you start to try it out, it's you will get the idea, you will get the reason why a lot of people are saying, when I'm not fishing, I'm thinking about fishing. This will get you into that mindset. And honestly, when the missus watched me start off on this fishing game journey, she was completely baffled, but she's still very supportive of me. And not let oh, I can't even begin to read your name. Not let Oskinarf. Hopefully I said that right. Fishing on a game is a way of stopping time and forgetting about the weight of those quests on your back. Very true, very true. Actually, in some games, like in RPG games, like in Breath of Fire, it is a side mission that you get into to kind of break the monotony of your quests. But if you get into fishing games like this one, Bassmaster Fishing 2022, it is your main quest. It is the one thing where you do. You go either free fishing or you go into tournament, try to earn money, upgrade your gear. In a way, it's also an RPG. Joe might object to that. Joe is very Joe is very adamant about the definitions of RPGs, but in my case, it might be a kind of role playing game too because you are grinding a certain level, a certain amount of money, a certain amount of ability, and it might catch your fancy too. For now, I'm going to toss the question to the panelists right now.
Mm.
Viraj, what is your opinion of my description of Bassmaster Fishing 2022? Is this something that you might want to consider go in the future going forward?
No.
No, just straightforward.
No.
No.
No,
Why?
look, I can appreciate because
Straight up,
fishing games.
no.
Yeah, straight up
No,
no.
not to be rude, but
No.
yeah,
No, no. I
I
mean,
think
it's
I think look, I think
absolutely. Go ahead.
I think with fit because one of the things when I create these mods or whatever, I do little mods and stuff, and there are a lot of fishing games. Fishing games have gone back even all the way back to the 16-bit era. You got
Yes.
so many like bass fishing games or whatever it was, and
Mm,
I was struggling to know which genre. I did play these for a bit on the
mm,
16-bit stuff, and I don't really regard fishing as a sport because it should really be a sport genre.
mm.
But I put it under simulation as the
Yes.
simulation. So you're simulating fishing. So I put it under simulation, life simulation. And
Mm.
I've always seen fishing as a simulation game series. I see it different from other sport genres in terms of
Yes.
how you're playing. You are simulating it the way it is. And as fishing games have evolved through time, I think
Mm.
Sega Bass Fishing was a turning point, because you had that little rod extension for your Dreamcast, if you
That's
remember.
true.
It was
Yes.
really
Mm.
immersive way to play these games. And it's you got the vision, all that. I think a lot of people love that aspect of it. I think that's really cool.
Mm.
Now, I've obviously played. I mean, the last fishing sort of experience I had was, as I mentioned earlier, Sonic Frontiers,
Mm.
and it is fun catching fish and getting points and getting money for it and all that other stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
With this game, it takes it to a level where it's like graphically they're very beautiful. The graphics are like that. Water does look like water. I mean, look at
Oh
it.
yes.
It's outstanding that what they've done into it. And in terms of the gameplay, it looks very intricate. That's
Mm.
what I say. And I think for this, if I was into fishing myself, I would definitely have a different perspective.
Mm.
A different perspective. Never
Of
been
course.
fishing in my life. I've seen people fish. I've walked past a lake where my family live close to, and there are people who fish in it. I saw a man with a rod, and I'm like watching him. I'm like, yeah,
Damn, he
yeah,
caught an
totally.
11-pounder largemouth bass. That is a very good one.
So for me, it's a case of I'm sure it's a really cool game if you're into this sort of stuff, have an interest in fishing, but I don't. That's why it's lost on me, sadly.
Yes.
I suppose it's like if I had nothing else to play and that's all I had to play, I'll play it. Right, and I will probably enjoy this game. Yeah, it's not to say I won't enjoy this game, and I suppose it's one of those things like. It's how I was introduced to Metroid. So, really, is that game that good? And if someone was going on in my ear about this game back then, like fishing, I'll probably have to think twice as hard if I'm going to buy this game because I want to shoot someone in the video game. I want to jump on a platform. I want to save the princess. I want to, all this other stuff. I want to be able to destroy this evil, mad scientist who's turning animals into robots.
Of course,
that's
of course.
For more reason. This is like I could do this in real life, and I think this is what it comes down to with sports games and me, which is I can do this for real life. Why am I doing it in a video game? Now, that's why it sounds really damning because it's not the same thing, and I know it's not the same thing.
Yes.
It's much more affordable than doing it in real life because obviously you got to buy the rods, you got to pay for.
Yes. Oh yeah.
So this is actually a very good affordable way to experience fishing, and as time has gone on, I appreciate that. If you want to do it, like if you really want to simulate fishing. This has gone really close to life right now.
I was about to say, thanks very much for bringing that up, Raj. As of today, July 29, 2023, you still have a couple of days for you to be able to have a good introduction to fishing games. Sega is now offering Sega Bass Fishing, their original game on the Dreamcast and available on the PC for free. If you guys are looking for a good fishing game, that's a good balance between arcade fishing and simulation fishing. Sega Bass Fishing is available to download for free if you subscribe to their Sega newsletter, if I remember correctly. You can just search in Google or in Bing, for those of you who use the Microsoft search engine, Sega newsletter Bass Fishing. You'll be able to subscribe to their Sega newsletter and get the Steam key for Sega Bass Fishing for absolutely free past July 31. I think they're going to start. Holy cow, look at that. A freshwater drum for 28 pounds. Sorry, I'm looking at the video right now.
I mean, is there a bit in the game where you can take the fish with you? You can cook the fish and eat the fish. I mean, do you have that?
No, sad to say. Although in Far Cry, in the game Far Cry, it has a fishing aspect as well. That is one of the things that you can do, or it's one of the things that you might be able to do, and it's the thing about Bassmaster fishing and all the other fishing games. A lot of the other fishing games, you don't fish to eat. Normally, you fish for points. You fish for tournament. It's more of a catch and release thing where it's more for bragging rights. You catch a fish, you show it off. Your huge lunker, your 40-pounder to everybody. Take photographs and everything, but you send it back into the water because of the fact that you are trying to increase the population of the fish in wherever you are, whether you're in a lake or in a river or in the ocean. It's more a case of you're showing your sportsmanship. Like you said, it's a sporting game. A lot of people actually consider it as a sporting game as well. Some television channels actually show fishing full time. There's the Major League Fishing channel, and there's the Outdoors channel that has actually programming blocks where people watch fishing competitions and fishing expeditions. And honestly, a lot of people might be completely tuning out by now, but it is one of the things that really went unappreciated for me in the old days because of the fact that my mindset was like for a lot of people. I don't know I don't know why people would get into this, but the moment, I guess it's one of the themes of our underappreciated games. The moment that something clicks in your mind, it just won't let go. Your mind just won't let go of it. You just want to plumb the depths of it until you completely understand everything about it. And I guess that's something about fishing games that I really got into. It clicked in my head, and you really want to get to know more and more and more about it. A lot of fishing games are ride that line between arcade and simulation. This game is the most hardcore simulation fishing game I've ever played. So if you guys want a real fishing experience, Bassmaster Fishing 2022 is the game to play. If you want arcadey type, subscribe to the Sega newsletter and get Sega Bass Fishing. I think you're gonna enjoy it. That's my take on fishing games and underappreciated games overall. How about Joe? I'm curious about what Joe has to say about this.
I have a few experiences with some side quest
Mm,
fishing, like Sir Joel mentioned
mm.
before, and he's right. It does break away from the monotonous experience of grinding for experience points. Most of the time, you're just there, trying to get the fish, and most of the time it's just part of the side quest. Like for example, if you're looking for a particular, if
Mm,
someone is like a quest, someone is asking for this kind of fish, and then you go there,
yeah.
you try your luck.
Mm.
Sometimes it's just a regular trout, sometimes it's just a shoe, you know,
Yeah.
and then you just try your luck.
Mm.
And to me, this is basically gotcha with a more fighting chance.
Yes. Mm.
You know
Very true.
what?
Very true.
um and so it's either, and to me, simulation games so simulation games like this one,
Mhm,
okay, you can to you guys listening and watching us for now,
mhm,
simulation games like this one, you can practically do this in real life.
mhm,
Although if you just want to have the pseudo experience of it, sure, play something
mhm.
like this.
Yeah.
Fishing games right now are getting more realistic,
Mhm,
especially in their graphics, especially with this one.
mhm,
um and and more they tend to add on the realistic factors that might affect the results of your fishing:
mhm,
temperature, atmosphere,
mhm.
your lures,
Yes.
the threads,
Mhm,
your actual fishing pole, where
mhm,
how shallow should you go, is how deep or how shallow the water
mhm,
should be,
mhm,
stuff like that. And and I'm not exactly the type of person that would look at this and I'm like, oh, this is my jam.
Yeah.
No, it's one of it's to me it's one of those, something that like you should be experiencing for the first time and then
Mhm.
see if it clicks or not. Like I
Yes.
mentioned, I have a few experiences with JRPGs with fishing elements, and I do enjoy them from time to time
Mhm.
for what they are worth, but not exactly a whole game all about it.
Yes.
I mean, the main point of doing fishing of a JRPG is because
Mhm.
you just wanna quit for a while temporarily the main quest
Mhm.
so you can go
Mhm.
fishing.
Yeah.
If the fishing itself is the main quest, then what the hell? I'm gonna go JRPGing as a side quest.
Well, there you go. That's it. Some would argue that Breath of Fire is a fishing game that
Mm.
has an RPG side quest.
Well, so games like with Breath of Fire, games
Mhm.
like Breath of Fire, even
Mhm.
Trails of Cold Steel has a fishing game.
Mhm.
Even Harvestella has a fishing game.
Mhm.
Has a
Oh,
fishing
that's
mini
true.
game. So
Yes,
all
Harvestella
you have to do
definitely
is
has a
just
fishing game.
all you have to do is just stand there, throw your lure,
I mean,
then at random
yeah,
you'll just get a fish.
obviously,
Games
this is
like
just
this, oh no, it has a lot more. It has a lot more
yeah,
things going on.
that is
Uh,
actually a proper fishing game. Those are mini fishing games. That's what you got. Yeah.
that's true. All right, that is. Let me just acknowledge the chats for a moment. Ranji
Mm.
Patek says those types of games are right up Neil and Joel's alley. Yes, thanks very much, Ranji. And Dan Faulkner says, I want to know if you could romance a fish JRPG style. Would Sergio consider playing
Well, there
it?
is. There was a scene in Ocarina of Time with Princess Ruta. That's a fish woman. She tried it on with Link. You might actually get excited by that. You know, she wanted to marry Link in that game. Lovely. She got
Okay,
that.
um, to Sir Dan's point,
Okay.
if this is like a little, if this is like a Bizarro World Little Mermaid movie or Little Mermaid game,
I was about
if
to
I'm
say, yeah.
fishing I don't know, maybe Ariel will take the bite. I don't know, maybe, but maybe
Oh my gosh. Well,
I wanna be. I wanna know where the people are.
oh my gosh. Although there have been RPGs where you have had interactions with the merfolk. So it's kind of implied there somewhere, yeah, I guess, All right, Ranji Patak says people thought it's a chill fishing game, but it's definitely competitive. Yes, actually Ranji hits it on the head.
It's not a chill thing. No, 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 no.
Now, the
No.
competition,
The
the
frustration
competition
builds up every time you don't get the fish that you want.
Oh
Actually,
yeah, it's very true. It's very true.
I
There
mean,
are certain games that where
even with
yeah,
Sir
Joe.
Joel's stream, so he
Oh,
gets all these big fishes, right? Trophy,
mm,
basically.
mm,
He could have just got if he's actually fishing
mm,
and I'm there and
mm.
I'm filming him. We could
Yeah.
have gone home. That's the
Yes.
biggest fish that we caught. But no, it's not the fish that we were looking for. Throw it away.
Precisely.
What the
Yes.
hell?
Exactly. It was a striped bass. I was looking for a largemouth bass. That was the only fish that qualified for that tournament. I got a striped bass that was 40 pounds large. Jaws saw it on stream. It did not qualify. I could have won the blasted tournament with that fish, but I didn't. That's the thing. That's really the competitive aspect of it and the frustration. If you catch the absolutely wrong one, you wasted your time, you wasted your effort, you wasted the hard work that you did reeling that blasted thing in. That's really what strikes your fancy. Like Joe says, it's a gotcha game, but you have an influence whether or not you're going to be getting the kind of
Right.
thing that you're looking
It's
for
not
exactly.
100% random. So
Yes. There you go. All right, excellent. So that is my underappreciated game genre for round one. Joe,
all
shall
right.
we continue with you?
Okay. On my game, you know me, guys. I'm a JRPG guy.
Yes.
So every once in a while, there are some companies out there who's trying something new, just to add a little bit more flair, a little bit more uniqueness to their JRPG. And my game for this particular topic, one of my games are Valkyria Chronicles One, originally for the for the PlayStation 3.
Hmm.
Now, why? Okay. So, oh, nope, not this one. Uh, another Valkyrie. No, not this one.
No, that's Valkyrie for
Um,
okay. A lot of
so
Valkyries.
one of the backstories were okay. So when this was first announced, um, I saw the trailers of it, and I'm like, okay. set the stage. This was released back in what? In 2003, 2004, or around 2008, something like that.
Thereabouts.
Mid 2000s, okay? And around this time, a lot there's this boom of first person shooters, right? The Xbox OG, Xbox 360 had it, and even the PlayStation 3 had it.
Mhm.
So there's this boom of first person shooters, and I'm like, okay, sure. But the first person shooters, guys, I'm not really a big fan of it. I played a few, but not really the first game that I would go to. Coming into this, when I first saw the trailer, okay, so this is just a JRPG's take on a first-person shooter style. Like you're running to something, stopping, and then shooting someone, right? And I'm like, okay, what? So aside from that, what else is it? What else is there? Um, and I'm one of those typical JRPG players um, who was conditioned magic skills, the typical ones, right? This is just people with guns and grenades shooting at each other. And where's the excitement in that? This is not, and I'm like, this is no different from Call of Duty. This is no different from Counter Strike. This is no different from any battle royale shooting games out there. And I'm like, okay, it was made by Sega. Oh shit, Sega made this. Oh, okay, sure. And then okay, so I bought the game, right? Okay. Oh shit. So I'm already aside from being an RPG guy, I also like world history, and particularly with world history, history of war. With Valkyria Chronicles, it's correct me, Sir Dan and Sir Viraj. So this is like like a somewhat an amalgamation of World War II. So the setting is a place called Europa, haha, Europe, right? So it's in Europa, and you're fighting this fascist government wearing black and gold and red. Okay, not okay. I see the Nazi Germany isms around here, the symbolism. Okay, sure. Oh shit, they're trying to invade a particular country. Oh shit. Oh, certainly this is not Poland. So, and I'm like, oh shit, okay. So this is basically it's this. So this is like a retelling of World War II,
Mhm.
the European theater of war back in 1943, 1944,
It
1945,
uses
right?
a lot of creative license. It's
Kind of, right?
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, so that alone piqued my interest because the trails didn't really mention all of that. So, so playing the first hour of it, okay, I'm interested on that. I like war. I like how they are trying to interconnect World War II uh, themes on this particular game. Okay, so I know why they're fighting now, and uh, gameplay wise, it's not necessarily a first person shooter though. It's tactical strategy as well. Although on this particular game, it's not really you guys moving on a grid, square lines.
Mm.
Every action you take, every spot you stop, it affects where your opponents will be, and it can also potentially affect it can also affect the the fate of your comrades as well, depending on where exactly you place them.
So
It's
Mm.
you have a lot more
tactical,
variables in this game. A
right?
lot more
Very
variables.
variable, right? And looking at the time, there were no actual guides because there's no definite guides for this game, guys. It's all depending on you.
Mhm.
It's depending on what set of soldiers you should be using. Should be you using lancers, the big guys with the grenade launchers. That's their lancers, right? You got your shock troopers. They're the ones who carries the submachine gun. Oh, your lancers. They move very their move set is not that far, although because they're carrying the highest firepower. So there's a balance, right?
Hmm.
You have the highest attack power, but sacrificing your movement. You got your scouts. They have the longest movement. They can run the furthest, but they can only shoot like 7 rounds of bullets. You got your shock troopers. They run on a medium length, but because they have their machine guns, they're more effective close on a medium range close range area. So you can just blast your enemies right there. You also have your snipers, of course. They are only effective on a long distance, obviously. Only one bullet though, and they move so little as well. So they're sacrificing their movement, but in exchange, long distance firing range. So and of course you got your engineers. They fix everything. They disable traps, they disable bombs, but they're basically the weakest of all of them. But that being said, you need to know which soldiers you should be using effectively and efficiently. Just because one personnel is weak doesn't necessarily they're weak. Period. Every single person has a job, has a task to do, and it's up to you, the commander, to move them just right to finish the missions. And you got a lot of missions around here. Storytelling wise, they tell it like a comic book. If you're going to look at if you're going through this, these are just the cinematics, right? That's just the cinematics. But you'll see right there earlier. There's this book. There's some pictures right there. So they're telling it. They're telling it like a picture book as well.
Hmm.
It's really hard to explain unless you play it unless you see it play it by yourself.
Hmm.
What else is in there? Oh, there's also a permanent death here.
Hmm.
Okay, there's a permanent death here, and of course it's a girl. And I'm like, guys, this is war.
Hmm.
Someone has to die,
Yes.
obviously.
Hmm.
Not all of your squad. So your squad members here, they're not invincible. If someone dies, they will die.
Hmm.
One in particular has a permanent death here, and I'm like, oh shit, here we go. Oh, here we go again. And I'm like, okay, so her dying. Okay, so her
Hmm.
dying. Okay, I went John Wick on the enemy. The next chapter after her death.
Hmm.
Okay, I'm like, okay, you. Okay, I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna
You're
kill you.
you're not getting out of here alive, you know.
I'm not getting out of here alive. Oh, you know why?
Mm.
On this game. Oh, I'm not saying it's just like World War II. They have their final solution here. They have a particular set of people here that it's a it's a like a substitute for Jews.
Mhm.
Very oppressed people. They tend to
Mhm.
round them up, very discriminatory. They
Okay.
tend to kill them. Actually, they round them
Mhm.
up and they kill them on the spot.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, one of my party members, a very important party member, is one of them. And
Ah.
sadly,
Mhm.
she's one of the victims. And I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, this will not stand.
Mhm.
So, so there's a chapter dedicated to her, and I'm like, I'm gonna get this mission right for her. and
Okay.
and I'm like, and I'm so upset. You know why? Because the person that I'm expecting who
Mhm.
would get really emotional because of her death, the game doesn't really have the time to show that. In the
Mm.
anime, there's an anime version of this, and they did.
Mm.
They showed that character showing some emotions after that death,
Mhm.
but in the game, no, there isn't. The game's like, okay, there's no time for that. This is war. Just grieve it, then move on. And I'm
Okay.
like, no, I'm grieving for that guy. I'm the
Mm.
one grieving for that guy.
Mhm.
I'll grieve for the both of us. That's why on that particular mission, no, this one's dead. This one's dead. One headshot. This. Where's my
Mhm.
sniper at? See that over there? Get him. Like no bullets go waste unwasted here. All right.
Mm.
So yeah. Long story short, this is a very good game. There are 4 games there are 4 games that Sega released for this. Unfortunately, the second and the third was released for the PlayStation Portable.
Mhm.
Such a far cry from the original, actually. And then they
Oh.
re-released this one for the PlayStation 4. That's the deluxe version. And then the Valkyria Chronicles 4 was released for the PlayStation 4 as well. But
Mhm.
the original stands on its own. Even if you don't play the second, third, and fourth, it's basically a standalone game, actually.
Mm.
Um, it's like it's a big what if
Mhm.
Nazi Germany in a
Mhm.
steampunk like technology uh, grew something like this.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's it really. Oh, and not it's just the European countries fighting, not including
Mhm.
the US.
Yeah. Mhm. Well, it sounds pretty heavy, actually, Joe. It's I can see why you can peg it as one of your underappreciated games because of the fact that coming from a JRPG background, something like this would probably be would fly under your radar. Of course, there's the anime aesthetic, but the first look at the genre itself, World War II type tactics and everything, I can see why it wouldn't appeal to you initially. But the way that you described it, it certainly does sound like something that can pique somebody's interest and somebody can get really absorbed in. Mm,
Yeah,
yeah.
and you're not just fighting people here. You're fighting tanks,
Hmm.
and you're fighting Valkyries,
Hmm.
so to say.
Ah.
And there's a one particular Valkyrie in here,
Mhm.
like okay, get the pervy stuff out of the way. The jiggle physics are
Yeah.
real. Yes,
Okay.
Very nice.
and I'm like, yes, run, run towards me. Okay, do it in slow mo. Okay, there you go.
Good lord.
Well,
Um,
first things first, let me just say hi to Dan Faulkner again on the chat. He says Valkyrie Chronicles is fantastic. Brilliant shout, Sir Joe. Its combat system is so unique and so well refined. Great story and characters too. Yep, it's essentially World War II in fantasy form with waifus. And Matt
With lots of
Basoba
waifus.
with
Oh,
lots of
speaking of
waifus.
waifus,
Mhm.
so and at this time, Sir Dan, Sir Joel, I
Ah, yeah.
haven't played. I haven't played Skies of Arcadia,
Oh, okay.
but
yes, but
the 3 main characters of Skies of Arcadia are in your party, and I'm like, okay,
yeah,
certainly, because they are their character designs are so very distinct, and I'm like,
yeah.
certainly, and at first you're on your first so you're on your first mission you're drafting your personnel, right, and
Mhm.
they're sticking out like a sore thumb on the barracks, on the
Yes.
selection screen. They're there, and I'm like, okay, uh, certain because you guys are certainly uh, designed a lot better
Mhm.
than the rest. Maybe there's something more to you guys. So I chose them,
Mhm.
and lo and behold, they were the main characters of Skies of Arcadia. Granted, it's a Sega
Mhm.
game, guys. Of
Mhm.
course, they
Yes.
are. And yep, each of these characters have their own quirks. They have their own pros. They have their own cons. Not
Mhm.
every character here is good. Sometimes there's some characters who are who will get some status buffs if they're with women.
Mhm.
Some will get status buff if they're with men.
Okay.
Some will somehow some people will have character buffs if they are with these particular people, this and that. So it depends on their affinity points as well. So
Mm.
there's a good miss and match here. The more you fight in missions. Oh, there are also skirmishes here that you can grind. At least there's some
Mhm.
grinding here. There's some
Mhm.
skirmishes that that you can train your characters so that when the time comes, their cons won't be a such a major factor when you're playing on an actual mission.
Mm. Okay. All right.
Headshots always headshots. See if you can see the video. See,
Yes.
always go for the headshots, guys.
Okay.
Always effective.
I think Viraj had something to
Or
say.
if you're like me who wants to John Wick everything, no, killing you with one bullet it's not enough. After what you
Okay,
did, nah, you deserve all of this lead.
I'm going to desecrate your corpse. Okay. Well, Viraj had something to say a little bit earlier. What was your input, Viraj?
I was going to say, I mean, the lead character, I thought, what, this character looks like Vice from Skies of Arcadia on Dreamcast. What's going on here? And I realized, okay, so yeah, Sega, they're going to borrow their bloody, it's their own IP. Of course, they're going to use their characters. And I'm actually surprised you haven't played Skies of Arcadia. Skies of Arcadia
No, at
Legends
the
yet.
time, I haven't played it yet.
At the
Yeah.
time, he hadn't played it
Okay.
yet, so it was something that he hadn't gotten into. There
Truth to be
you go.
told, after I played this, I went straight to Skies of Arcadia.
What do you think of Skies of Arcadia?
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh,
That
that's also a good game, and
is
also
really
an underappreciated game. That one.
definitely, yeah.
Mm. There
That is
you go.
I appreciate it. These are re-release. In fact, people forget about that game. Sega make a re-release for your Dreamcast classics, or better still, put it on the Dreamcast Mini. Anyway, going forward, and talking about, well, let's talk about what I think about this game. It's definitely unique, isn't it? I mean, there's no other game quite like it in how it plays.
Mhm.
Yes, it comes under the sort of JRPG strategy JRPG genre, but then the only other thing that I've sort of seen in terms of strategy JRPGs are, you can talk about Fire Emblem being the one that's leading the charge, but again, that's very grid based, very strategy based in that regard. So there is a methodology to it. As you mentioned before, this doesn't have a grid. This is purely based, and you made a point just at the start of the video about how, okay, your character or your party can move in certain locations, and that just opens up the variable counter exponentially. When you get attacked, it affects you, and it depends on where you're standing or where you are at the
Correct.
proximity. So there's something to be said about that. So that opens up another array. Obviously, it's turn based, so it's not like live. It's not like action, but if you want to play a game like that, okay, there's Call of Duty if you want to shoot someone live action. But this game is unique because there's no other game quite like this. I like the art style. Okay, I like the way it's drawn.
Oh yes.
Got
Oh
this
yeah. I
easy-
haven't. I forgot to mention about the art style.
yeah, there we go. So whatever you forget, I'll just fill in on. Lovely steampunk look of it. It's got nice neutral pastel colors, shall we say? Nothing
Yes.
that really bounces out at you. It's just a very well presented game. I mean, I personally can understand that the women in this game look attractive. They're very well drawn because obviously I can understand why the whole waifu thing is a thing with this game, so I get that. But yeah, it just looks like a really, really well made game, and it is a shame that the PSP ones should get, like, I know they're different from this particular version, but they should get re-releases as well. This is a series deserves to be enjoyed by everyone on a more mainstream platform, a home console. We're talking the PS4 or even PS4, or even Switch, where people buy it on the Switch. I think it should have much more of a bigger release. It really does sicken me not sicken me, it saddens me, I should say, that certain game studios just want to make something exclusive on one platform. I mean, it just makes sense why you just do a multi-release on all of them. And I've always been one thing I liked about Sega is they typically do all of that. I think Sega should do that. Please correct me if I'm wrong if they have already, but it would be nice to see the whole series because, like we said about now, and this is another question, just Joe, and this is linked to what I said about Metroid Fusion. You have to play the other games to play this one. Canonically, or can you play this game without playing all the others?
Oh, no, this is the first one. So this is the first one. This is the first game, and then the sequels are not. And then, if you're going to play the sequels, they're just referencing the characters. So even if you played Valkyria Chronicles 2, 3, they're just gonna reference some of the characters, but they're pretty standalone. Valkyria Chronicles 4. 2. There are 2 characters from the first game will just be there in your party. So at first you'll go, okay, who are you guys? But then again, they're just there. They're not there long. They're not gonna stay there for too long. So it's just like a cameo. So even if you don't, they'll just reference it. Oh, they're the heroes of the first war. Yada 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 yada.
Yeah.
Okay. It might spark an interest on whether you should play the first game, but if you're just playing it,
it doesn't play a major factor into the story.
No, it doesn't really. It's just so all of the games are basically standalone with a few references from the first game without really you necessarily playing the previous games.
Okay.
On this one, Valkyria Chronicles 1, even if you don't, guys, if you don't play even the second, third, and fourth, just play this one.
Okay.
If anything, if it wasn't for the Sega brand name in there,
Mhm.
I wouldn't even give this game a shot. To
Well,
be honest.
well, there you go. I mean, so I thought you were talking. I thought this was the one of the later games in the franchise. So I
Mhm.
didn't know which number it was. This is the first one.
Mm.
Okay, fair. I'm not playing any of them. I know Dan goes on and on about Valkyria Chronicles being really, really good. I've
I
read
mean,
up.
at this point, I have more faith in Sega than Nintendo,
Mhm.
if
Wow.
that makes sense.
Well, to be
In
honest,
terms of
Sega have
making
always,
JRPGs, huh?
Sega have always made better JRPGs than Nintendo. I don't care. I mean,
Mm.
what have they made? Earthbound and Super Mario RPG with help from Square. Square
Mhm.
Enix is not
There you
Nintendo.
go.
It's a different entity. Let's remember that, right? Square Enix is their own company, whereas whereas Nintendo don't really do JRPGs. Sega do, to be honest.
Mhm.
And Sega. One thing I like about their RPGs, from what I've played, as opposed to what Nintendo made,
Mhm.
okay, is they are much more of a challenge. And even Square, yeah, Sega do make much more challenging aspects. They make their systems a bit more complex, more intricate. They add that extra challenge to a game, but they also add that extra fun factor to it, which I don't think Square really offer. There's a bite. There's a bite with Sega when it comes. That's the word I'm using. There's a biting aspect to Sega RPGs, and that's me playing the Fantasy Star series.
Well,
Definitely.
I'd like to highlight this comment by Matt Bustle of Bustle Plays Games. He says Valkyria is almost like a miniature tabletop war game like Warhammer, but more faction based like Mordheim. And that's actually a very insightful comment, Matt. There you go.
But yeah, and going that comment and going on top of that comment shows this game's uniqueness. And one thing
Mhm.
about Sega RPGs, like you got Shining Force and you got Fantasy
Yes.
Star, they're different from each other in how they play, how their battle mechanisms are, and this is the crux of it. The
Mhm.
battle mechanisms in Sega RPGs are different and quite like no other. With like that Square, they use very much the similar sort of aspects from their other games. They borrow our assets, and they haven't really. I'm not saying they haven't innovated. They have. Yeah, there is definitely some difference between the Square games, but with Sega, one game is usually very different from the other, and there's a lot more creativity involved in terms of how the battle system mechanic is in their RPGs. Say what you like about story, art style, and presentation, and you can always compare it amongst any others. But one thing I like about Sega is the innovation in how that battle mechanic is in their RPG. That's what makes them different from all the others, and that's as much as I really want to say in regards to the way this game looks and in other Sega games.
Mhm. There you go.
And this
Very
game is
cool.
so interesting in terms of their character developments, the plot of the war itself. Oh, and knowing the basic methods of warfare,
Mm.
camouflage, hiding behind the trees, not getting seen, hiding beneath the grass, all sorts
Mm-hmm.
of stuff. And like Alexa Verge mentioned, the art style. If not for the gameplay as well, it's a very fantastic game, and I'm so glad I played it. Sir Joel, any more impressions about this game?
Well, it certainly is one of those things that you will, once you get into it, you definitely will want to delve deep into it. And it's for the war fanatics like you, I've had my share of interest in World War I, World War II. You will the emotional moments, I'm absolutely sure, will grab you by the heartstrings and pull you along as you go through the storyline from the looks of it. Dan Faulkner says, well said, Silverage. Sega's JRPGs are generally more unique and have a bite, especially if you include Atlus's SMT series, Shin Megami Tensei series. SMT5 is supposedly one of the hardest games on the Switch. I've not played it though. Oh well, there you go. Gotta have to get into that. The SMT series is the main line, shall we say, of the Persona series. A lot of people make the mistake of thinking Persona is the main line. No, the Shin Megami Tensei series is the main line, not the Persona series. Yeah, my thoughts, definitely something that I would probably get into. I'm just worried that if I get into it, I might get a little too emotional about it. Though. This game
Don't
series,
get too
Valkyria
attached.
Chronicles.
That's all
All
I'm
right.
gonna say. Don't get too attached to the
I just looked
waifus.
this game up. It is actually on Nintendo Switch, so I'm going to download it. And
Mhm.
the fourth one is on the Switch as well. It's just the other two are on the PSP for some weird reason. So
Oh, there you go.
accessibility was a bit lame with that, but
Mm.
there are other ways I can play those games. But I'll find a
Okay.
way. Anyway,
All right.
moving on.
Very cool. All right. Moving on. Let's
Oh, speaking
mm,
of Sir Dan,
mm,
Sir Dan also gave us his testimonial
mhm,
in regard to some of the games that he scoffed at first, but came
mhm.
to like them
All right.
otherwise.
Sounds good.
So
Let's have a listen to what Dan has to say.
yeah, here is Sir Dan. Take it away, Sir Dan.
Hello, chaps. I hope that you're all well. We'll get straight into my choices for games that I shunned, but then at a later date I really took to. First up is Star Control. Star Control's an action strategy game. It was originally released for MS-DOS and Amiga around 1990, and it got a Sega Genesis port, which was the one that I first played about a year later. It's basically an interstellar war game. Where you can take control of one of two factions, and it's a traditional ally versus evil empire type setup. But you have one section that's dedicated to action, to just blowing things up, shooting things. You have another section that's all tactical and a bit like an interstellar game of chess. When I first saw it, I actually saw it in a Mean Machines magazine review, and they scored it really high, and I could not understand why, because I just looked at it and I thought these graphics are really simplistic and really nothing spectacular at all. You know, the backdrops are all space, like dead black space. There is some nice presentation on some stills, but the actual main gameplay graphics looks really basic and more leaning towards more an 8-bit 80s era than a 16-bit 90s era. So I was like, nah, this can't be great. And it was also the first 12 megabit cartridge for the Sega Mega Drive. So I also had to get my head around it. It could look so simple, and yet rates are highly and require so much memory space. So I just carried on thinking, there's got to be something in this. There's got to be something in this. And I actually... I saw it for a swap, available for a swap, with a guy who used to come round in a van and swap games with us. And he had it there, and I thought, you know, shall I take a chance on it or not? And I did, and I thought, yeah, why not? Well, you know, I was just so intrigued by why it was such a big cartridge, really. And I'm bloody glad I did, because it is one of my favourite games ever. It's an absolutely addictive as hell, clever as hell, just absolute fun game. It really is. I think it's because it's got two fun elements to it. You've got the strategy side of things, which I love, and that's fun, and the shooter side of things, which is again fun. The shooter side of things is really where it's at. It's a very rock, paper, scissors style setup where certain ships have a weakness or a strength against other ships, and matching that up with the tactical elements is just really, really addictive. And you can also play this in two-player mode. And two-player mode, if you put a random melee mode on where the computer picks what ships you play as, it can last forever. This is a game I've lost countless nights in. You know, me and friends have put this on like for a quick go, and then 3 or 4 hours later, we're still playing it. So that's my first choice anyway. My second choice is Avernum, Escape from the Pit. So we've got another similar scenario here. Avernum, first of all, it's a role-playing game. It's a traditional isometric one with strategic combat. It was developed by Spiderweb Software, who are an indie development team. Or I say team, it's Jeff Vogel, who's one guy. And it's a remake of Exile, Escape from the Pit, which was released in 1990. It's basically a really unbelievably ropey, thin, bare bones RPG. It is, you know what I mean? It's the presentation and the style of the game is almost early 80s in terms of how it moves and looks. The actual graphics themselves are more advanced than that. They look more like a 16-bit game. But it's just, you know, it's like cardboard movement. It's not very spectacular at all. And then this for another, again, I just looked at and thought, wow. And because it was quite a later release, because it was 1995 for Exile, and then this got a remake in the 2000s. I were gobsmacked that, you know, games like this were coming out, and you know, how can something like this compare with something spectacular like Final Fantasy or something like that? It just don't make sense. But I tried it, and yeah, again, really addictive. Fantastic story, fantastic world. I mean, it's an open world game, and this world's just a joy to explore. There's so much you can do with it. You can create your own characters, and that character build element adds a nice layer of depth and enjoyable a few enjoyable aspects to it, and it's just a really, really absorbing game. And within a few hours, you forgot how it looks. You know what I mean? It's well written as well. There's a lot of good dialogue in here and a lot of good writing in general. And it's they've hit a real nice sweet spot of it's the small enough writing for it to be digestible, but it's not. It's got enough content there. It's still long enough to have enough content. So that's another one. That's another brilliant game. So my honourable mention goes to another poor graphics game, which is Flicky. And Flicky is a platform game developed by Sega and released in the arcade in 1984. And we got a Sega Genesis port of it in the 90s, and it's a really, really bad looking game. I mean, this looks bad, like so bad it's good. You know, I mean, this is like a B horror thing where I look at the graphics on it and I'm like, oh my god, that's so bad. I want more. I want more of that crap. And it's childish, it's cutesy, it's horrible. It's just not. It's not what I want. And you know, why would Sega make anything like this? And again, I read a magazine review of it, and it said it were a lot of fun, a hell of a lot of fun. I'm like, what they're doing? I'm not touching that. I'm not touching that crap. I saw it going cheap for about a tenner, if you excuse the pun. And I thought, yeah, I'll give it a go. Give it a go then for a tenner. Because I thought if I buy it for a tenner, I can always trade it again. You know what I mean? Flog it onto a friend, make me money back. And it's just so addictive. It's so addictive. It's a really simple concept of just travelling around a looped screen, saving birds, and avoiding cats. Pretty simple. But the controls are they've nailed it. They've just nailed this kind of jumpy, floaty feel that creates so much tension and like a sense of fear of being chased by these cats. And there's not, it encourages high score. So there's that high score element that when you play it, you want to beat your high score. But it all works so well, and it should when you look at the elements separately, it really shouldn't, but it does. It is a game which is just so addictive to play because Sega of each stage laid out perfectly, and Sega knew what they were doing. And they knew that you go certain ways at certain times, and you know the way that the enemies move in conjunction with the stage layouts and the way that Flicky moves himself, it all ties together brilliantly. And the chicks that you have to save, they create a big line behind you, and that line can get broken. So it's not just a cat getting your sprite. It's also if it hits these sprites behind you, then the panic stays with you anyway, because then you've got to go and get them chicks back again. So again, Flicky it's just a superb, really, really incredible fun game. It is an amazing game, and I absolutely love it. And I have to be honest, I find this way more addictive than some of the more lauded platformers such as Super Mario World. I mean, Super Mario World's a great game, don't get me wrong, but that's all about discovery. I never really find that tension or sense of excitement in a game like that, like I do in Flicky. So they're my three choices, lads. I hope you check them out, and I look forward to hearing what your choices are when I watch this show back.
All right, so that was your Dan.
Excellent choices
Thanks for Dan for your choice.
I completely agree with all of them, actually. For Dan's choice on Star Control, that's one of the greatest games. It's one of the greatest games of all time, ever since DOS era. Star Control 1 and 2 are classics. We're talking like if you are at all familiar with DOS games, DOS strategy games, Star Control, those are the ones that are, those two are just way at the very top of the list. Avernum Escape from the Pit, I tried that recently. I completely agree with Dan. If you're not careful, with the Avernum Escape from the Pit, you are going to get sucked in so far that you're not going to come up for air until hours later, like because it's an old school type of game where the old BBC bulletin board computer system games where you download and then you really just get addicted to it. Avernum, Escape from the Pit, and I think there's 6 of those all in all. So that's hundreds of hours of gameplay. And the very last one, Flicky, I understand because of the fact that it's the arcade type experience that Dan relishes. Personally, I think that's what Dan is experiencing with Flicky. If you put in your quarter in an arcade game and you get hooked on the gameplay, that's the game that Flicky brings to mind. If you ask me, the
What's
arcadey
so
feel.
Joel? What's that
Mm,
PSP game?
mhm.
Loco Roco.
Loco Roco, yes,
Kinda,
that one is a lot of fun
it
too.
kind of
Yes,
reminds me of this.
it does. Yes,
Weirdly.
It's actually
Or
a
Mappy for the Super
Mappy.
Famicom. Yeah.
Mappy, which is the Namco sort of thing.
Mhm.
Oh, I mean, it's different, but Flicky is actually one of the. It came on this thing. I've got it here.
Oh, nice, very
There you
cool.
go.
Well,
And
there
also
you
the
go.
Sega Astro City Mini. You can get these
Mm.
quite at a decent price now. Actually, it's gone down quite.
Mm.
And it plays homage to Sega's arcade history. Obviously, it's not advertised on the box, but it's one of I think is like their 3rd game in their lineup. I think it's a Sega System 1 or System 2 game. One of the earlier arcade games when they were developing their boards, and it was a hit in the arcades back then. If Dan thinks that the graphics on the Genesis port is bad or the Mega Drive port is bad, you know there's an SG-1000 port of that game, and I've played it.
Yeah.
And,
Okay.
the gameplay is there even on that one.
Really? Okay.
1000 game plays really well, but obviously Mega Drive game is the one that you want to play. In fact,
Mhm.
the arcade version I played on this, I'd say the Mega Drive version is the best version of this game because obviously they've had, over 8 years now 7 years since the arcade one to put it on 16-bit hardware to actually enhance it and make it look better. So you will play the Mega Drive one. I understand Dan's sort of apprehension when you're playing this game. It looks like an 8-bit game on a 16-bit platform.
Yeah.
Why are you paying a premium? Why are you asking a premium? It's not the graphics you're buying; it's the gameplay, and that's what it is with Flicky. There's just something addictive about the simplistic aspect of picking up all the little chips, flicking the sticks at the cats, getting them out of the way, and put them in the hole. Yeah, and then you and getting all of them. If you get all of them in a row, you get more points. It's a simple concept, but it's a lot of fun.
Yes.
And the challenge is there every level, and it is a lot of fun. So I've got all 3 versions of this game. I'll play them in some form or other, but they're there. But going back to the original game, Star Control, I've played it. I have played it for a bit. And I've got through it, but it is a very depth game. It does involve a lot of concentration in depth. And
Oh yeah.
all the little aspects of it. There's a game that's similar to that called Starflight on the Mega Drive.
Starflight. I keep seeing it. I just never got. I never got to start up on it. I'll give it a try.
I think I talked about it in alternative RPGs.
Okay.
I did.
In that episode, but I just want to just quickly talk about that for a bit. Again, I would say that's probably you could actually give that a go. If you like Star Control, you like Starflight, you should play both those games. I need to give Star Control a proper go because obviously that's got a bit more depth than Starflight, but Starflight has depth in other areas as well. In terms of the graphics, though, Starflight is 16-bit. Unlike Star Control, and I can understand why Dan has that apprehension. Like, what is this? This is meant to be on a 12 meg car. What is this? The primitive graphics are terrible, but obviously the memory has gone into the programming and the menu system and how the game is, the content of the game, not the graphics. That's where it's all gone. So I get why that game was big, and I get why my Starflight was big as well. Both of them very good games that have been under the radar, that were underappreciated, and people back then probably know about it. But and the reason I came into touch with Starflight is because of my dad, because it's an older person's game. A young person like me is playing Aladdin. Starflight is an adult's game on the Mega Drive, and I played it later on in years when I thought, you know what, my dad never completed this game. I'm going to make a point and beat this game, and I did. It's something I could do that he couldn't do, and that's something I'm proud about. But anyway,
Okay.
but yeah, these sort of games do invest a lot of time, but they're a lot of fun if you can really see the fun in them. But yeah, Flicky and Star Control, very different games, but I can understand. Graphically, not that impressive, and people overlook things. And I think that's a problem in today's age where people look at graphics over gameplay. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day.
Agreed.
Making that point where
Agreed.
16-bit, man, it shouldn't even look like this. We've moved on from this 8-bit stuff. We should be sometimes we should go back, and this is what the channel is fundamentally about, the retro gaming community. We don't care so much about the graphics. It's all about the content. And if the content is there, you can gel with the game, have a lot of fun, have that escape that you want, have that sense of self-actualization when you've beaten the game or gotten past a certain point. That's the buzz. That's That's what it should be, and that's what these two games are. So good choices, Sedan.
All right, very good. Well, we're approaching the 2 hour mark. I would say, how about we do a speed round? How about we
Okay.
do speed round for our second choices?
Really?
The second one. I'll be quick.
Viraj,
Okay,
your
so
I
captain.
mean, we can afford the extra minutes.
Well, we can afford the extra minutes, definitely. We'll
the
we'll,
next game-
we'll you know we'll go through them. We'll go through our second choices, efficiently, shall we say? All right, Viraj, you go first.
the next game I was going to talk about is Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney on Nintendo DS. Now, this is a game that my friend Luke told me to play and give it a go because I was getting Advance Wars on the DS and I was familiar with Advance Wars because I played the Game Boy Advance games. I thought, no, I want to play this. He goes, what other game? I got money for another game. What should I get? He goes, get Phoenix Wright. I'm like, what the F is this nonsense, man? What is this?
Okay.
If I wanted to watch a movie or read a book, I'll read a book. What's this text-based crap? You know, what is this rubbish? And I thought, okay, let's give it a go. Now, I was playing both these games at the same time, Advance Wars DS and this. But this game I preferred. In fact, I thought, well, what's going on here? And I followed the story, and it's cutesy. The first case is cutesy, and basically what it is, you play as the character Phoenix Wright.
Yeah.
He's just become a lawyer. He's got a mentor called Mia Fey. That's his sister there. And so that's her sister there. And the first case, okay, you save your friend Larry from getting done for a murder he didn't do. And that was actually quite a light one. The next case, this is where things get real, where your mentor has been murdered. The person who helped you become a lawyer has been murdered. And the way the story is written and the writing in this is so beautiful. It touched me. It really got me when some of these look like so deep. And you as you follow the story, like, okay, and you meet characters and you think, oh, that guy is so obnoxious. I hope he gets it and all that. And it's like it's a visual novella. That's what this game is fundamentally. So it's my first visual novella sort of detective game where I've got to sort of find the clue. Well, you find the clues in every bit, and then you get to a court case scene, and obviously there's some dialogue there, and it's fundamentally English comprehension. Okay, you're cross-examining them. The witness will talk on the stand. You have to work out, okay, he said wrong? Where's the contradiction that contradicts this evidence I found at the scene? You know, I was there at 11 o'clock, but obviously there's a book that you see signed in, and that person is signed in at 12 o'clock. So you think, well, objection. You object at that point. You think, well, hang about, this says something otherwise. Then it really does make you think. So not only are you drawn into a great story, because this spawned many sequels. This is the first of many. This is actually a Game Boy Advance game in Japan. It actually got ported to the DS. Let me explain that. And they put an extra case at the end of the DS one to give it more value. So there's actually 5 cases in this game, which probably this is the best one because all the others have had 4. This is the best game in that series because it had 5 cases. This is a proper game. And it really is beautifully written because the story, Phoenix's character development arc, Maya Fey, like Mia's little sister here, you see here, because she was obviously, you had to take care of her because her sister was murdered and she came down. And there's so much going on. I think she was accused of the murder, actually. So she was accused of sister murder. She didn't do it. Some other bastard called Red White. I can't remember. Anyway, too late. But give it a go. It's a great game. And it wowed me because I actually stopped playing Advance Wars. I played this instead. This game, that came second place. Forget you, Advance Wars. I've had my fun with you. I'll play you later, yeah? And I've played this, and ever since then, it's just been one game after another. And I've religiously bought the games after that. Not so much now because they're download only now. You don't get physical media anymore, which is such a damning thing about the Phoenix Wright series. But I love this series, and that's fundamentally it. Those of you who haven't played it yet, give it a go. Give it a go. Give that trilogy a go because you will want to follow the story. That first trilogy is gold.
It's real. It's a testament to how good it is that it keeps getting ported to almost every platform. I've seen it ported onto the iPad. I've seen it ported to Android. I've seen it ported to Switch. I've seen it ported to PlayStation.
You can get it for peanuts. Peanuts. Get it.
Really?
For peanuts. Yeah, it's nothing compared to what I paid for the original one game. You could get the whole trilogy for a third of what I paid for the first game. It's worth it.
Ranji Patag, my godson, says objection, and he says my favorite visual novel, one of the best stories I've ever played. I swear, intense story, big plot twists, connections from one case to another. That's very unique. The fact that the connections carry over. That's it. There you go. Very good. How about you, Joe? What's your opinion?
This is one of those video games that transcend meta status because of the objection meme.
Yes, that's true.
At the time when it was first released, you always see the meme in some shape or form, and you're like, and if you're on the know, you know where this came from. Right? It's Phoenix Wright. And I'm like, I'm not even playing the game. I only heard of the game, but I
Mm.
know when I see that meme, it's Phoenix Wright.
Yes.
It just reached that kind of that cult like level status of fame.
Yes.
And if you're one of those people who like reading a lot of text, and I'm like, that's not really is the case because me and Sir Joel we like watching animes, and so this is not really. So you would think like something like this. This is not something so foreign to us, like
Hmm.
uh, because we like watching anime in their full Japanese glory with lots of English subtext. So and you think that this something like this would interest me, and because I'm secluding myself on the RPG world. Technically speaking, this is kind of an RPG, but more of a visual novel style,
Mm.
kind right, to say the least. And I'm like, okay, and like it's one of those games on the Game Boy Advance that I would like to be in my collection, and I would probably like playing uh, soon or maybe later in life,
Hmm.
maybe. But it's the thing is, I would rather one of my personal bias with visual novels is that there's not much interactivity.
Ah.
You
Okay.
know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
if I'm reading a visual novel, like Sir Viraj mentioned, I'll just read a
Hmm.
book,
Hmm.
or I'll just watch something episodic. At least they're
Hmm.
moving.
Hmm. Well,
So
in this case, I
right.
think you'll appreciate this job because of the fact that the actions that you take, the things that you observe matter, especially when it comes to the court portion already, to the trial portion. And I kind of liken it to an auditor simulator because of the fact that you have to train yourself to learn to listen for inconsistencies, to watch for those little things that don't line up really. And I guess that gameplay aspect is woven into the visual
Oh,
novel portion
Sir
of it.
Joel mentioned about the courtroom drama.
Yes.
Yes, I'm very much interested in that as well. Uh,
Mm.
if not for the generic ass storytelling, at least make the courtroom drama a little bit more fascinating and a lot more interesting. Like
Oh,
yes,
yes.
You got some
the
good
cross
looking women.
examination. Oh, one of the defendants is very inconsistent with his statement.
Mhm.
Uh, with the statement with some documents might be missing, some
Mhm.
people are trying to destroy the evidence, stuff like that, I
Mhm.
mean,
Mm.
so yeah, it's intriguing in itself, especially with all the courtroom mambo jumbo and the legalities. um, if for all of the people who are also not maybe would like to practice law, this
Mhm.
is a good game to start with.
Yeah,
Well,
Viraj, go ahead.
so there was actually a YouTube channel where there was a lawyer who was actually talking about Phoenix Wright,
Oh, is
saying
that
this.
legal beagle? Yeah, I saw that one.
So there's that one. But also, I just want to make a point about the point you made about interaction with visual novellas.
Mm.
Actually, with this particular game, there's an investigative phase. So when you go to the crime scenes, you do explore and point and click and
Yes.
discover evidence. So there's the interaction there. And also, you can actually look at
I
the
saw
evidence.
that game. It's called Dick Tracy.
Yeah, well, on this particular game, you can look at the
Mm.
evidence, and on later, I think on you can actually look at the evidence, and you use your stylus or whatever, your touchscreen on your DS or
Mhm.
on the Switch. I don't know how they did it, but you can actually navigate around the item and see if there's a crack in a vase, for example, and see if a certain piece fits with another. So actually, there is some interaction there. It's not just a point about point clicking all the time. There is actually like you look at objects and as later games go on, there were other gimmicks added to the investigation phase. So there is a level of interaction in this, my friend. But I suppose it
Mhm.
depends on how much interaction you want. Obviously, I know the interaction you want is with the waifu women in this, and sadly, with regret, that isn't
Yes,
a feature in any of the Phoenix series, especially because a lot of the women, the witnesses, and that are really good looking. I'll tell you that now.
that is
Um,
called
Mhm.
witness tampering, and I approve of that.
okay,
Tamper
so
the witness all night long.
I think that badgering the witnesses is what I call it. But anyway, uh, but going forward, like the characters in this are
Mm.
very interesting, and I like the way they're drawn. The art direction in this game is amazing. As you go on
Mhm.
occasionally, Oh my god, I love the animation on this. I like the cartoon. I like the way they're speaking. I love the. My father was watching me play this, and he's watching some client getting stressed in court, pulling at his hair, and his head explodes. He's like
Yeah.
cartoon. He's like laughing at like his ears, like steam's coming out his ears. He goes, I was like, what is this? I love this. He's laughing at all the animations while I was
Mhm.
sweating a witness. But yeah, look. In short, a great game. Something I didn't think much of. But
Mhm.
I love it. I love it, and I think people should definitely give this a go. It's peanuts on the Switch store. You can play it
Yes.
on mobile now. You can play it on any format now. They've gone everywhere. So give it a go if you haven't given it a go. If you want to, and it is such a wholesome story. I think somebody wrote something in the comment section. We missed the thing because it went so fast. He even said
Mhm.
his favorite. He loved the trilogy. He
Yes.
mentioned as well. He
Mhm.
said, I said, so give it a go, guys. Give it a
It's
go.
on sale too on the Switch right now. If you guys are interested in the series, check out Nintendo.com. It's like Viraj says, it's for sale right now for peanuts.
All right.
All right. So I'm gonna be going with my choice this time. I'll just go through it very quickly. My choice, my second choice for underappreciated game is a game that I personally didn't appreciate because of the fact that I had a trauma with the subject matter. In the old days, during the times of the Athlon and Duron and Intel wars and everything, I built my own PC. And it was a grueling experience. It was hard to source the materials. It was hard to find out which part went with what. So I had a personal trauma with building PCs. Now, the game in question is called PC Building Simulator. And I did not relish the idea of going into a game where you actually played a guy going into business building PCs. The idea here is that you are going to be starting off a business by building personal computers. And these are real computers. I mean, these are to spec. We're talking about computers that actually do exist in real life. You can actually check out their wattage. You can check out the power of the graphic unit processor. You can check how dirty a CPU can get when it first comes into your shop and you're asked to clean it. It's that kind of game where you actually build PCs. You can buy PCs that are PC parts that are should actually you should consider whether they fit into your build or not. Now, it's not as involved in terms of storyline because of the fact that the story is not so much in terms of you are off to conquer the world or anything like that. You are just there because you are being given specific requests by clients to either clean their PCs, to debug their PCs, to get rid of viruses from their PCs, or to build them a brand new PC from scratch. And my personal trauma for that one was building the PC, and I really was not looking forward to trying this out. But my daughter got interested in it, and we gave it a go. And surprisingly, I found myself getting very addicted to it because of the fact that getting a PC together, building it all together, budgeting, pricing out the parts, budgeting it all, making sure that they all would fit in terms of power, in terms of compatibility, in terms of whether or not they would work for according to the client spec, and getting it to finally run and shipping it off for a profit is surprisingly addictive. Surprisingly, you get into the grind of making sure you get the cheapest parts that will fit the customer spec, putting it all together, making sure that it works, and then selling it off so that you make money and then expand your business. It's not story wise very involved, but eventually you will get into it because of the fact that this is the kind of thing that will the grind will get to you, and finding the optimal build, especially when the customer is asking for a gaming PC or for a PC that will be best for running spreadsheets or something like that, or upgrading his personal computer because it just won't run the latest the word processing software anymore, is the kind of game that I was dreading beginning because of my past trauma. But since my daughter wanted it, and of course I love my daughter, I started off on it and I began to appreciate it. Honestly, PC Building Simulator is surprisingly successful actually in the market. So much so that real PC companies have started to endorse it because it is highly accurate to how you do a PC build. You search for parts, you check the compatibility, you make sure that they fit, you make sure that they work, you make sure that they're up to spec. And it has expansions like NVIDIA, ROG, Asus, and everything. Real life counterparts show up in actual gameplay. So for those of you who are looking for a nice semi-relaxed simulator game that is a little off the beaten path, PC Building Simulator is the game to try. So I endorse it, despite my original trepidation of playing a PC game based on building PCs. This is the game to try. All right, opinions. Oh, actually, Ranji Patag says probably will teach a person to actually build. That's what he said in the chat. It is a good stepping off point if you are curious about how it actually feels to build a PC. Yes, Raji, I agree. This is a good way to kind of get a feel of how it is to actually build a PC. Not the grueling parts of slathering on thermal paste onto a CPU. No, no, not that part. But slotting everything in and making sure that it all checks out. Yes, that is a good way to kind of get a feel of how to build a PC. Viraj, what's your opinion on it?
I think it's a very cool game. I've never seen anything quite like it, and especially like I tell you that, and I totally second you on putting like once I put a graphics card in my computer and it was like, what's going on? I don't want to talk about what.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
It works, but something really bad. It made a lot of noise. Let's put it that way. Okay, but it did say on the box it was compatible, and yeah, there are those people who do make their own PCs and all that. But then I've known people that have actually bought computers from people who make PCs, and they just never worked as good as you would if you were to buy it in the shop. That's the truth. Really, if you're going to buy a gaming PC, let's be honest, it's gaming PCs. If you can buy a custom-made PC and you think you can get it done for cheap, okay, fair enough. But you might be unlucky. But that's just life experience of mine talking. You might have met someone who's great, who knew what they were doing. Good, that's great, good for you. I'm glad it worked out. But this is really insightful for those people who are thinking about making their own computer. Looking at all the parts, and it's all very good. Because I remember doing a paper in theory when I was in college about, what components of the computer it is, what does it make to make hardware, what do you want in your PC, how does it work, etc. What is the cost of making a PC separate, etc. And it's interesting because this goes into depth. It talks about the Ryzen and the Intel. It talks about you see all the little bits and the tools you need to make everything. I think I don't really see this as a game. I see this as a tool. I see a tool of people who are genuinely interested in making their own computers, albeit it's probably a little dated because obviously they're talking about components maybe a few generations ago.
Oh yeah,
but and obviously the cost is going to be dated because the price of these things go up and down.
Oh yeah,
it's the theory behind making a computer and watching it run, and this is a really good training exercise for people who are interested in making computers, and that in itself is the game. Can we make a computer for this much? What is the best one for the money? What can I do this? What will it perform at? What will it do this? What is it? So yeah, I think it's a really good game, simulation game for what it is, and it has its benefits for sure for people who are interested in that specific thing. And it's a powerful tool. That's what I see this game as, a very good tool.
Yes, Dan Faulkner, of course, our co-panelist in the chat says, "What a great educational concept." Then you and Dan are in agreement with that. It is an educational tool, technically. How about you, Joe? I know you are probably not going to be the kind who'd actually touch something like this, but if you were to lay your hands on it and maybe spend an hour with it, would something like this kind of be something that you would play?
Are there any hot women in the game? Any hot women?
No, absolutely not.
Any naked women in here? No.
No.
Is the one making the PC a girl?
No. You're disembodied, basically.
Okay. No. I mean, there was a time when I fell off from console gaming that I wanted PC gaming as well, and there were thoughts of making my own build, of course.
Yes.
But it's crazy expensive, and you're right. And I'm like, okay, I'm one of those people who would like getting the best components out of options, meaning just in case I want to play this, at least my PC is capable of playing this. You know what I mean? I'm not necessarily going for the bare minimum. I'm the type of person that if I can afford it, sure. I'll tend to research first what would be the best components are, and then whatever it is there's available. If it's whether it's availability, affordability, of course, and the performance of it, pros and cons compared to the other products. I'll get that.
Mhm.
And going to something like this, and I'm like, okay, and you're right. This is a nice. This is a nice educational tool for people who have no any lick shred of engineering knowledge whatsoever.
Mhm.
If you're just into PC gaming, for all of you PC master race out there, okay, this is something that you might enjoy,
Mhm.
or at least something that you might recommend to those people who would like to build their own PCs.
Mhm.
So do it something like this, and it's not necessarily for those for it's not a game for casual gamers. Definitely, it's one of those very maybe a niche audience.
Mhm.
If you're not into PC building or PC gaming at all, then no, not really. And even if the PC Master Race gamers are are um, are into PC gaming that much, I don't think some of them are into, like, delving into something like actually building their hardware.
Mhm.
Some PC gamers out there will just buy will just have somebody else build it for them, or just buy an actual PC or a high end laptop and then just game it that. They're not really in very particular with the components,
Mhm.
piece by piece.
And then there are
So,
people
yeah.
like Henry Cavill who are, hardcore gamers who build their
Oh, you
PCs
know
and
what?
are
That's
extremely hot.
unfair. That's unfair.
There you
You
go.
know what? That guy have no business.
Mhm.
Okay, have no business playing siding for the PC Master Race and still
Yes.
looking like that.
Well, he didn't
Looking.
always
Yeah.
look like that. He didn't always look
No,
like that. He was fat. He was a fat guy in school. He got bullied as a kid. Did you
Oh
not
yeah,
know?
that's true. That's true.
They
Yeah.
call him Sonny Cavill.
Yeah.
He worked out like to look like that. He worked hard to
Mhm.
look like that. Yes, but
Yes.
he did get bullied a lot in school.
No,
He got
that just goes to
no,
show that
that's correct.
he was a
Well,
geek
what I'm
in
saying is,
school, and then
bullied
he
well,
before
what
he
I'm saying
became
is,
Chad. You know.
yeah. No, but what Joe is saying is
it
that
goes beyond the traditional look of a PC gamer. Okay,
well,
Okay, that's fair enough.
I mean
Fair enough. But then
he's
you
basically
know what? Props to him. Props
right
to him.
now Henry Cavill is Superman, he's Geralt, and he's
right.
potentially James Bond. So you never know.
But it's not
If you
Geralt
tell
anymore,
me, if you tell me
man.
that Serverage will start working out
Oh well, there you go.
and then starting his own PC build, and I'm like, okay, I'll believe that because I know him personally.
Oh my gosh. Well, that is my opinion. Oh, Jom and Ben, Jom and them, Jomarat Facebook gaming page, Jomarat on Twitch, and Jomarat on YouTube says, "Nice PC simulator. This is where I built my current gaming PC. You can also use this for business. I do. Build a PC record, show it to the client is actually really effective. Hey, if and honestly." Like to Viraj's point that it is a little outdated, they are coming out with PC building simulator 2 now. If it's not out yet, then it might have much more up to date components, much more up to date pricing. And for those of you who are interested in the PC building scene, this is the way to go. You might want to give it a try. All right, on to you, Joe.
Okay. Um, for my second game, oh, this is so hard, making it a lightning round. Okay, so I'm not, so revert back. You know me, guys. I'm an RPG guy, and aside from JRPGs, I'm also interested in mythology. What in particular? European mythology, ancient European mythology, Norse mythology. So in this particular game, it's Valkyrie profile. Valkyrie profile. God damn it,
Okay, there you
Valkyrie profile. So
go. Joe is into Valkyries today. There you
I'm
go.
into Valkyries. They're hot.
Okay.
So, but what about Valkyrie profile? Okay, so
Mm,
a little bit of a backstory. Shit. So
mm,
lightning round. Okay, fine.
mm,
So when I first saw this, okay, this is a JRPG. Sure.
mm.
I saw the magazine foot. I see the magazine photos. I've seen this on one of our local shops. I look at it. Okay, has an anime ish kind of look into it. Okay, sure. And then I tested it out, and I'm like, is this really an RPG? Why is this like a like a platforming game?
Mhm.
And for the first 30 minutes or so, they're just talking. And even if they're talking, then the actual gameplay is just it's just her uh, flying around, and then once she lands, platforming. Yeah,
Mm.
and it's like it's just the three of you. And I'm like, okay, sure. Why is it like this? And one of the games that I thought of initially, like, Sir Barrage, Sir Dad, those the Sega Genesis Jurassic Park
Yeah.
Oh
games
yeah.
where
Mm.
you can, like, you're moving you're moving like from left to right, and if you're going somewhere else, you just there's like you can press up or down
Mm.
Yeah. And it'll
to
pan
move
the
to another
camera.
scene,
Yeah.
right? It's it's exactly like so it's exactly like that, and I'm like, so that's the
Mm.
first thing I thought of.
Uh-huh.
Okay, sure. So it's not one of those JRPGs like you're roaming around freely.
Mhm.
No, it's like a side-scrolling platformer going left to going left, going right, depending on
The bad.
where the map takes you.
Yeah.
And then when we went to the gameplay, okay, so this is what I'm talking about. And if it wasn't for, and if I didn't say this, what's the other game? That kind of looks like a platformer, like Odin Sphere for the
Odin Sphere,
PlayStation 2,
yes. Mhm.
right? But this one here, okay, this is the turn-based kind of RPG that I'm more accustomed to. But instead of choosing your actions like one by one, each character is designated to your buttons
Mhm.
depending on where you place them. So Valkyrie is usually will move if you press square.
Mhm.
The upper guy is corresponding to triangle. So if you push triangle, he'll attack. The one on the bottom represents your X button. So if you press X, he'll attack. And the one at the back, usually your mage or your long range fighter. If you press circle, they'll attack. And the good thing about this is that uh, for you to achieve maximum damage and the maximum amount of combo damage you can deal with your enemy. You don't necessarily push all the buttons randomly.
Mhm.
There's a certain rhythm to it, like depending on who's your character on that battlefield. y- there are times that Valkyrie needs to move first. Sometimes she needs to act second. Sometimes she needs to act last. So
Mm.
depending on who your characters are, it has a lot of trial and error. So you don't. So it's not necessarily you need to mash buttons for them to attack. At first, I was because I didn't know any better. Uh, there's a attack gauge there at the bottom that you need to hit 100% so you can perform their special attacks. Yeah, and I didn't know that, so I'm just pressing buttons all willy nilly. And then when I found out, okay, so I need to reach 100% combos. That's the time when I pressed uh, each button more methodically. There's a certain finesse into it. So yeah, and story wise, if you're into Norse mythology, it's all about Ragnarok, Twilight of the Gods, Aesir, Vanir, Mjolnir,
Mm.
Thor, Loki, Odin, Freya. They're all here. The Nordic gods are all here. They've taken liberties on how they portray these characters are, and they can some of the boss characters here can be very OP, very broken, and even maxing out their levels with a game chart will not help you.
Mhm.
And one of the things here, the crazy Spider-Man jumps. To get some of the items, there are placed very intricately somewhere too hidden. Either they're too hidden or they're situated way too high on the platforms.
Mm.
So you need to. you need to plan your how far your jumps will be, how many jumps you'll take.
Mm.
Uh, it, I can't I can't show you a specific game footage of those crazy Spider-Man jumps, but it's if there's one thing that inhibits me for from playing this game again, it's because of all of those. Some of the best equipment, some of the best items can be acquired by doing those crazy Spider-Man jumps. That's all I can say.
Hmm.
That's why I love my Game Shark. I don't have any time for that. I don't have any time for that. But either way, this game has been ported to the PlayStation Portable. The definitive way to play this, they added more story into it. They fleshed out more characters. Played the Valkyria Chronicles Lennes for the PlayStation Portable. But for the nostalgia of it, the PS1 is also a solid game. A solid game. Yep. Thoughts, gentlemen?
I've played this. I've never managed to get really far into it because honestly, the storyline is very dark. I guess that's the right term for it. Not dark in
Yes.
terms of yes.
Yes. Just sorry to interject, because
Mm-mm.
guys, if you're into Norse mythology,
Yes.
Valkyrie is searching
Mhm.
for mortals to fight
Mm.
on behalf of their camp, the
Mhm.
Aesir and the Vanir, right?
Yes.
And unfortunately, these mortals need to die
Mm.
for their spirits to be gathered by the Valkyrie to fight for the Aesir.
Mhm.
So there are a lot of backstories here of some characters, very dramatic ends. Unfortunately, spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Well, they're all gonna die, of course.
Yeah.
That's the shtick of this game anyway.
Mm.
These people need to die first before they can be in your party.
Mhm.
That's her go.
It's just that the fact that once if you're used to the shiny happy JRPGs, I went back the way I was back then. Going into this, dealing with darkness, death, end times, and everything, it was very heavy and it was very hard to get into for me. And despite the brilliance of the technicalities of the game, it was very hard for somebody I think I was in my early 20s when I wanted to try to get into this one, but it was hard too. So maybe sometime in the future, now that I've gone through much more in life, much darker things in life, and I've seen the heights and depths of what life has to offer, I think I'll be able to appreciate this a little bit more in terms of storyline. So yeah, thanks for reminding me about this one, Joe. And passing it off to Viraj, what's your opinion?
I like the attention to detail in the art style. So let's talk about the
Hmm.
art about this game.
Yeah.
I absolutely think it's beautiful.
Yeah, the
Got
artwork is it's
platform.
not your typical JRPG
It's
artwork.
Enix, guys. It's
Yeah.
Enix before the merge.
Hmm.
It's
But
Enix and its glory.
uh, yeah, well, Enix has always made beautiful art. I always preferred their art style to Square back in those days. If we're looking at comparing their games, but I really like the art style. I like the fact that during the battle sequences, as we saw earlier, there's a bit of scaling where it zooms in and out, it crops in and out, and there's a bit of scaling there, which I like because obviously one thing that Mega Drive struggled with was scaling. You know, and Super Nintendo could scale, but it was still a bit juddery. On obviously the 32-bit stuff, it's actually quite smooth. You can see it's there, and you see the textures in the background as well, and the attention to detail in that, and even the attacks and the special abilities. If you look at the magic and how the effects is all the various special effects on this. This was outstanding back in those days. If you think about it, obviously now we take this for granted, but even then, stuff like this is locked to its time. I think there's something really special about it, and you can tell that there's a lot of effort that was made in the production design of this game, in how the characters animated, how they reacted, how they took out the villains. Look at that fire effect there. Look at the different transparencies
Oh
in.
yeah. Mm.
I mean, let's just take a minute to just look at that. It's absolutely stunning. And this is a game that I'm not aware of. It's the first time I've seen it. My first impression of viewing this game. Is this a game that I'll play now? Yes, it's a game that I'd be interested in. I think it's a very well-made game. I like the darkness of it because there are a lot of cutesy role-playing games. Just obviously anime style that does have a cutesy element to it. But even the enemy designs, some of these creatures that you fight look a bit scary. So yeah, I like it. It must have a very interesting story, and for yeah, like you said earlier, for youngsters, I'll really go on and play this. It's a bit too dark for me, but as you get older, you can appreciate the darker story. You can appreciate the level of grit that goes into the character. You really do feel like you're an adventurer up against all odds, and that's the sort of game that this looks like. And I've not even played this game. I'm just going on the first impression from what I can see here from the video and from what you've told me.
Mhm.
So yeah, props to you. Props to you, Sujoko, for suggesting this game, because it's not something that I would have even known about. I mean, whatever. But now I know it's a game that exists on the PlayStation that I can definitely give it a go.
All right, Dan has a very pertinent question for you, Joe. You can read it out and answer it at the same time.
Sir Dan said that he only played the sequel to Valkyrie Profile, which is 2, Silmeria. But the way it played wasn't for him. And he's asking if I have played that. Yes, I have played Valkyria, Valkyrie Profile 2, Silmeria for the PlayStation 2.
Mhm.
And I made a video review of that one. I posted that on my YouTube channel and the PRG Facebook page.
Mhm.
And how does it compare? Okay. Oh boy. All right. So they up the ante with the Spider-Man jumps. Good
Okay.
lord. Okay. So if Valkyrie Profile 1 is very traumatizing because you don't know how exactly you're gonna get there, they up the ante with this one. They went nuts with this one. And you know how I like using my Game Shark because I have no time to grind and
Mm.
getting all those items. If you use a Game Shark on Silmeria, it will corrupt all of your save game files. So better
Mm.
not do it. I learned it the hard way.
So Silmira said, "Filthy cheater."
I heard it, I learned it the hard way.
Okay.
And as far as the gameplay, it plays pretty much the same as this one.
Mhm.
Circle, triangle, circle, X square. They still move the same way.
Mhm.
However, the side scrolling aspect of it, that's still there. The fact of the gameplay. Okay, so in the gameplay in Valkyrie Profile 1,
Mhm.
god damn it, in Valkyrie Profile in VP1, okay, in
Okay.
VP1, I'll call it VP1. In VP1, uh if you encounter the enemies, they're just there, right?
Mhm.
They're just there. Enemies right here on the left, and then your characters are on the right. In VP2, once you encounter the enemy, there might be way beyond there on the other side, and you have to go to them. You have to approach them. Okay,
Mhm.
so you have to approach them so you can engage them on fighting them on a um, on the old-fashioned way. So that means that because you're moving your character, you're dashing to get to those opponents. Sometimes the topography can get in the way. Like for example, if there are stairs and if you're dashing, some of those characters will end up being left behind because they're too stupid to follow you. It's not like it's just the Valkyrie moving alone. No, it's all four of you dashing towards the enemy. If there's a particular obstacle and someone gets left behind, and if someone gets left behind, and it's only the three of you fighting the enemy. It's so stupid. I don't know why they made it like that. So if I'm going to compare, I would say VP1, storytelling wise, gameplay wise, it's a tighter game compared to VP2. So I would suggest playing VP1, and just because VP2 has more updated graphics, no, this is what Serverage mentioned. Graphics ain't everything. Just because it's a new generation doesn't mean the gameplay will also and be anything different.
Mhm.
Okay, I would say VP1 as a whole it plays a lot better than VP2. And unfortunately, I haven't played Elysium yet. Took them a while to make another Valkyrie game. To be honest, I haven't played that one yet. But as far as I can tell with the gameplay, oh my god, another DMC stuff,
Ah.
another hack and slash game. They Square. I'm not sure why Square Enix is keep doing this. Keep doing this decision making everything hack and slash.
Well, because it appeals to Western gamers, I think
Yeah.
JRPGs.
Screw the Western gamers.
Yeah.
What
That's
about
where the
me?
money is. That's where the
What
money
about
is. Sad
me?
to say.
What about my needs?
Light action RPGs, man. People want to feel like they're beating someone rather than letting the character do it themselves. I think that's what it is. But look, I'm not here to debate. It's what Square's market research division have looked at. Final Fantasy 16 is going to sell. They're going to make a lot of money from it, whether we like it or not. It's just the way
What
it
about
is.
my needs? What about Sir Joel's needs? What about Sir Dan's needs? What about our needs?
Kurt Labrada says on the chats, reminds me of the game Dust and Elysian Tale. Oh, that's something I keep seeing around, Kurt. I just never got the chance to try it out. It might be on Game Pass. I'll give it a shot. Thanks for the recommend. That's the nice thing about interacting with the audience. We get to find out about all these things that kind of relate to each other and might be interesting to us. All right. Okay.
Okay, so right before we end the show, guys, let's just hear it with Miss I's testimonial about her games that she scoffed at, but yet
Yes.
enjoyed.
All right.
Mind you, I just fixed this up at the last minute, so apologies. I'll upload the final version. I don't want. I mean, she's waiting down there. Might as well. Here she is.
Boom.
Hi everyone, this is Essen Porter. I'm gonna talk about my underestimated games. Games which I didn't find interesting at first, but then when I dove into them, I found them really interesting. So my first pick is Dragon Age Origins, an RPG released in 2009 by BioWare. It's set in the fictional world of Thedas, where you are recruited as one of the Grey Wardens, defenders for when creatures called Darkspawn and a dragon tainted by Darkspawn called the Archdemon come to the surface every few hundred years to attack in an event called the Blight. So I first came across this game from cards of the now inactive online trading card game called 1UP. I was actually appalled at the 3D character designs. I didn't like them, so I kept trading my Dragon Age cards. But later on, I became a deck maker in the TCG that I had to make Dragon Age decks from photos submitted by TCG players. They piqued my interest, and so I downloaded it off the internet. Again, we do not condone piracy. I enjoyed the game a lot, so I ended up buying an original physical copy of the game, which is the Ultimate Edition, which has all the DLCs. I fell in love with the game, and that I liked its gripping story. The gameplay is amazing. There is some strategy element to it, even though it's live combat. You can actually pause it. You can set what the characters in your team will do so that the others attack enemies, help each other, or stay behind while you control one character. You can zoom in and out, and the PC version has a top-down view. And having played Dragon Age and its other games, it led me to buy Baldur's Gate later on, which of course is also another BioWare game. I enjoyed the funny dialogue in Dragon Age, the choices, the banter. In this game, you also get to choose the character race, which then gives you a unique origin story for each race. It's all different before one huge pivotal moment in the story where the story of the character as a Grey Warden begins, which is the same for everyone. The voice acting in this game is excellent. Well, there is the Tim Curry. Come on, Tim Curry's in here. And then there's, I love Alistair, played by Steve Valentine. I think everybody loves Alistair. And then there's Turn Logain, which is voiced by the Simon Templeman. If you don't know him, he played Kane from The Legacy of Kane. And not to brag, but I have an autograph of Simon. Please pass the picture, Sergio. There's so much to do in this game that when you finish the main game, I did it in maybe 80 hours. You want to replay it as a different race or class because of the different skill set, weapons, stats. Rogues have higher dexterity early on, so you could open the door in chests and locks. And even after that, there are the DLCs which you could play. So there is excellent replayability. One thing I don't like about this is the fade levels. I mean, I don't like the fact that there is a known bug where you get stuck with the boss, and if you do not have a previous save from before the fade levels, you're gonna have to replay it from the start, just like I did. The fade levels themselves, I'm okay with that, but other players hate it. So I love Dragon Age Origins that I then played Dragon Age 2 and Dragon Age Inquisition. And just to put it out there, Stan said, the cake is a lie. If you know, you know. My second game is Ys 1 and 2 Chronicles, which was originally released in 1989 and 1990 for the PC Engine and TurboGrafx respectively. Here you play as the main character, adult Christine, who must seek out the 6 books of Ys that contains the history of the ancient vanished land of Ys. Those will give him the knowledge that he needs to defeat the evil forces currently sweeping the land of Hysteria. So Ys is the name of the land that is floating above Hysteria's surface for 700 years, which you can see in the game. I came across this game in 2018 during a Steam sale. I wasn't actually sure whether I'd buy it. I was just looking for any games on sale, so I read reviews and wasn't really sure about that bump system. But then I gave it a chance and actually found that bump battle system really satisfying, especially when you're strong enough to attack enemies without losing health. I really enjoyed the story and the lovely anime art. The game is quite short that you can finish it in under 3 hours. And there is actually some replayability with it, even though it's just short. You can play different difficulties for achievements. This game also got me interested in other Ys games that I played. Origins next, which I love the action RPG combat there, and it's an excellent prequel with nods to Ys 1 and 2. I also bought other Ys games that are currently in my gaming backlog now. Also, there was an anime made about Ys 1 and 2 back then. I've seen a few of the first episodes and I love how they captured the story, the game, even though the anime is not really long. At this point, I'm thinking maybe I should play the PC Engine or TurboGrafx version because as a gamer, I think I should play the original. The Ys 1 and 2 Chronicles are modern versions. One thing I liked, or just a tidbit, in the intro, the nurse stops Bluto and Snap from interviewing Ado, who just woke up from being rescued because he showed up on shore after like his boat sank. And then, because the nurse was kind of telling them off, Slav said, "Uh-oh, here she comes. Watch out, boy, she'll chew you up." If you know that, yeah, you're old. You get the reference. Well, I love Hollywood. So my recommendation is play 1 and 2 first, then Origins, so you won't be shocked with the gameplay change. Origins has a similar combat style to the other sequels. For my honorable mention, I choose Mafia 1. I love GTA, so I was looking for similar games that are third person, and this popped up on my Steam recommendations. So Mafia 1, not the definitive edition, the original one, was released in 2002 on Windows. It isn't as open world as GTA. I enjoyed its story. It's cinematic and feels like a gangster movie. There are also cool classic cars, and they're enjoyable to drive, except that driving level at the start when you need to drive a really slow car. But it's kind of a miss that it isn't on the definitive edition, you know, as part of the Mafia 1 experience.
That games like
There are
GTA
also
do
nice
not.
music from the 30s
For
and
minor
40s that
crimes,
you can
still
play
pull over,
while
cop a
driving
symbolic
on the
fine, as
radio.
there's no currency
What
to
I don't
collect or
like
spend,
about this game
and
is
carry on.
mainly getting ticketed from the speed, especially when
As a
you're in a
concession for gamers
chase.
turned off by
So
this
this led
traditional
me to
quirk
also
carried
play
over from
Mafia
the original,
2,
however,
which
know
I
that the
also
system can
loved.
be
The
toggled to
story,
ignore
the
minor
graphics was a
indiscretions.
huge upgrade.
Vehicle handling can also be
And
switched
sorry to
between
fangirl,
regular
but
and simulation,
Vito
though
Scala
the
is
differences
handsome.
between the two don't seem
And
quite as
Mafia
stark as
3,
they
I
do in
tried
Mafia
demo,
3. Regular
but
feels
I'm not
slightly
fond of
lighter
the
and
true
more
crime
responsive,
documentary
but
style
simulation is
storytelling,
easily my
and it
preference.
doesn't feel
There's
the
an
same as its
excellent sense of weight to
predecessors.
the vehicles as they
So
struggle
that's
on their
all
tiny
for
tires, and
my
I love
underestimated
tossing them around
games.
90-degree
I hope
corners
you
once I have some
have
real momentum,
enjoyed
which
those
admittedly can
games
take some
or
time in
will
cars
be
built before
trying them.
World War II.
And let's hear
Motorcycle
the other
handling is
panels.
strong
Thank
too.
you, everybody.
They're a new addition to this remake.
Well, there we have
There
it.
you have it.
Like I said, Miss Eileen's choices are always very interesting and the kind that you would want to try out in the future. Haven't tried them out yet.
So that was Dragon Age Origins.
Yes.
Ys 1 and 2. Hey, a fellow RPG gamer, finally. JRPG, you found its way to Miss I. Let's talk. Let's talk Ys together. And what's the other one? Mafia.
Mafia.
Hey.
I mean, use book 1 and 2 you can get on this thing here. This is the
Amazing.
TurboGrafx PC Engine Mini. This is the TurboGrafx 16 Mini in Europe. This is our European shell.
Is that the mini one?
This is the mini, yeah.
Pretty much, that's the
You-
mini. Pretty much the same size as the as the
Yeah, it's a little bit
original.
bigger, it's just a little bit smaller, so it's funny that. But yeah, it's HDMI out. There we go. It confirms it.
Right.
That's the mini. I think it's actually the best version of the TurboGrafx 16 Mini. If I'm being, I know I'm being biased because I'm in the European region, but it's smaller. It's the same size as the Japanese version, but you also have the turbo switch buttons on the controller for it, which the Americans have. The American TurboGrafx 16 is quite big. But anyway, but Use Book 1 and 2 is actually on this, and it's nice to see Miss Arlene's choice because she obviously looked at the pimped out one with the liquor paint and actually looks so much better than the original. Well, the original Book 1 and 2. The original Book 1 and 2, obviously, Ys actually came out in 87, and then 88 was a sequel, and then Book 1 and 2 was a fusion of those two in 89. And then they made Ys 3 eventually, which is the best version. That's the Mega Drive, I would say that. Genesis. But yeah, it's very nice seeing the liquor paint on that RPG. It actually looks much more appealing. I mean, yes, we know it's all about the gameplay, but sometimes you need graphics to entice you into wanting to play the game as well. Sometimes if you're like born like I am, like bang splat in the middle of the 80s, and you grew up on 16-bit stuff, when you look at something that's 8-bit, you think it takes me harder to get into that. It's a bit of a slog to get into. That's correct. 8-bit. But it's how it plays and that's it. But that liquor paint really does that classic game justice, and I appreciate it.
That is the same argument I keep hearing from Chrono Trigger fans. You have to be there during the 90s when you play Chrono Trigger.
Still hold up. I think 16-bit graphics still hold up. I don't care what anyone says. I mean, the next step from that in terms of 2D game, well, there wasn't anything more. I mean, you get 32-bit 2D games, but there's not much in it really. Just more colors and probably a bit more 3D rendering. But that's it. It doesn't enhance it that much more than the 16-bit palette. 16-bit to 8-bit is a huge jump. It's a huge jump in terms of what you can do. But when you go to 32-bit, I think, okay, yeah, there's a bigger jump there on 2D games. It's really the 3D stuff with 32-bit and beyond. But 16-bit is like the best 2D looking graphics. And if you don't like 2D games, you don't like 16. If you don't like 16-bit, you clearly don't like 2D games. That's what he tells me about that person. But anyway, never mind.
In my case, it's just the legacy. If it's sure, I'll play it eventually. And it's made by Nihon Falcom, one of my favorite developers of JRPG developers.
Underrated developer, for sure. They don't shout loud enough. And their sound team, I'll tell you what, I know we haven't done our sound one yet, but their sound team is on point. They do amazing sound for their games. I just want to put it out there. Yuzo Koshiro did the music for Ys, by the way, who went on to do Streets of Rage and onwards. The Sega composer who did the Streets of Rage and Shinobi game. He worked on Ys. He's one of the composers there. That's where he started off before he moved on. So
you know what? I'm just waiting for that particular game where the Ys characters are going to be mashed up with the Legend of Hero characters. I mean,
it can happen. It
can happen.
But yeah, Ys.
What are your thoughts about Miss Eileen's games, Sir Joel?
Personally, they are excellent choices. Miss Eileen's choices always are on point. Mafia, I hear I have the collection and I have to start off on it. It's got that 1940s going into the 1960s vibe, and I hear has a really good
Mafia
story.
versus
Yakuza by far, but Mafia I hear is a very good choice too, because I have a particular fondness for 1940s music, and if I have that playing in the background, anything that I do with 1940s music in the background is going to be enjoyable. 50s and 60s, I think Mafia 2 and Mafia 3, and then the Dragon Age, one of the better more recent RPGs, and I kind of agree with Dan on that one. Dragon Age is awesome. One of the few modern 60+ hours games which I've gotten played through more than 5 times. Great choice, Miss Eileen. Very good on that one. And Ys, I've tried Ys Origins. I have to admit, again, my reflexes are crap, and I'm not very good with the very fast hack and slash type of games. But it was enjoyable, surprisingly enjoyable, and of course the running gag about Adol, the main character, always ship always sinking, and his always
he is cursed. Don't let that guy in.
It's a running gag.
Adol and Dogi, the stuff they got up to in those games. It's fun. I love the story. Actually, it's pretty funny.
That's it.
Yeah, it's interesting. You like them.
He's a flight risk. He's an ocean.
He's a flight risk. Okay.
I mean,
oh my god!
You like the 1940s, 60s.
Take his passport away.
Stuff. It's good stuff that you like. It's from your era, so I can understand, Sir Joe, why you like that kind of music.
There you go. And that's it. Okay. All right. Excellent. I guess, Joe, it's up to you to wrap it up.
Yeah. Oh, what is this, Sir Joe Marot? Asking the question.
Mm.
Is that the RPG that you can play on the phone? Aren't there any East games on mobile?
I believe so. Yes. I
Android
think
and iOS?
East.
I think they
Yeah.
have.
I
I think
think
they
they
released a
have.
few.
Yeah. There are a
I
few
think they may
East
have.
games that have been ported, and surprisingly, a lot of games will run on your Android phone now. I mean, some people have hacked their Android phones to be RetroArch machines, and they just connect them to Bluetooth controllers. They game on the go. It's
All right.
something to consider.
And yeah, that's the show, guys.
Hmm.
Some of the games that we underestimated, that we scoffed at, but we later enjoyed after playing them. See, we're not snobs. I mean,
Mm-mm.
maybe a little bit at first, but people can change. People can change, and don't judge a book by its cover. Okay, judge the
And
cover with the plastic cover. All right, so that's the show, guys, and let's do our shameless plugs. Let's start with Sir Joel. Where can they find you?
All right, guys, you can find me at the Banyagang Native kick.com page and the Banyagang Native at twitch.com. I stream occasionally. I'm trying my very best to catch up to all my streaming because of the fact that life has gotten in the way. I attend a lot of events, particularly this summer, and you will be able to catch my streams, fishing games, and lots of other retro games and lots of different other games on my kick.com and my twitch.com channel. Hashtag FUFB. All right. That's it.
Hashtag FUFB with a
Yes.
P.
Mm,
All right,
okay.
thank you for that, Sir Joel. How about Sir Viraj, the one who led the charge for this episode? Where can they
Mm.
find you?
What are you talking about? I didn't lead anything. I made you guys do all the work as usual. Anyway, yeah, you can find me. I'm obviously on the Sega Genesis group on Facebook. You can also catch me on Sega Mega Masters, which is a new YouTube channel that we've started. We've got a few episodes going. We've recently got our most recent episode on Sega Mega Masters, where we're reviewing a very prolific Sega arcade game, which has been ported on one of the many Sega platforms that have been released over the time. So check it out, Sega Mega Masters.
Oh, is it is it out already? Outrun.
Yeah, he put it up there. Put Outrun on Master System. There it is.
There
So,
it
yeah.
is. There you go. Thank you for that, Sir Viraj.
Thank
And
you.
just to plug the show as well, Timeless Gamer guys, as always, you can check them out on the Facebook page of Pinoy Retro Gaming and the YouTube channel Timeless Gamer PRG. All of our episodes are in there. Well, the ones that haven't flagged by Nintendo.
Yeah.
Anyway, but we're trying to retrieve some of those episodes back. And the audio format is also available on all of the major streaming podcast platforms out there, like Spotify and Audible. Oh, and might as well let's just announce it as of today. On our next episode, we came so for the next week's episode, we were going to do a movie review, and we asked some of the gaming Facebook groups out there, and vehemently they chose Super Mario Brothers 2023, the movie, for us to do a non-spoiler slash spoiler movie review discussion. So that will be on the next episode, and we'll just announce the exact date on when that will be. But hopefully, it's going to be a fun show for all of us. Yeah, and that's it. And our games and our bodies may grow out of date, but our gaming experiences will forever remain. Hey,
Timeless. All right. I'll see you guys again soon.
Yes,
Bye.
ta-da-ta-ta-ta.